Inside the Nightmare. Real Chuck E. Cheese employee horror stories. The worst being the parents letting their children kick and punch you when you're in the Chuck costume. Yeah, I pushed your kid down when you weren't looking, because they were punching me in the twig and berries. Not an employee, but I contributed to these horror stories myself. I was 5 years old and I was at a classmate's birthday party. I was just getting over being sick, so I was happy to be able to eat at a fine establishment like Charles Entertainment Cheeses. I eat pizza and have a good time with my friends. At the end of the night, when we're being rounded up by our parents, 2 other kids and I are still running around. I'm chasing a friend, and I stop to catch my breath and I cough. Oh, but I don't need to cough. I need to hurl. I proceed to do so, then I wipe the sick off my jacket and continue to chase my friend. I get sick as I'm running, and it's just a wild, crazy trail of throw up everywhere. My dad ends up getting a hold of me and takes me to clean up in the restroom. When we go back out to ground zero, it's just a mess. And there's one lonely employee with a broom and a sawdust. Oh my god, is all he was saying at the mess I'd made. Poor guy, I would have quit after that. I worked there 20 years ago as a game technician. I'd get pulled out of my repair room to help understaffed areas, which I didn't really mind too much. Then they asked me to be the rat one time. I'm a 6'7" guy, so everything that's supposed to be baggy was comfortable, like that episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes to clown college. So I walk over there, over 7 feet tall with this costume head on and wearing my own shoes, since the suit ones are too small. Children start crying and running away. The poor kid who was there for his birthday boom-boomed himself. So they immediately pull me back into the back room and get a guy from the kitchen to take over. They never asked me to do it again. My second favorite story was the time the girl I was helping into the suit chucked up inside the head. So I take it from her and start carrying it outside to hose it off. Once again, the kids start crying. I guess I should have been aware that bringing the severed head of Charles E. Cheese across the floor could cause some panic in our young customers. Then there was the time some father came in with every intention of wanting to kick my butt because I gave his daughter nightmares. I remembered the girl was like 4 years old and had stopped me to say that her token was eaten by a game. So I explained to the dad that the game manager had opened it up and the mechanism was clean, so I flicked her a credit and closed up. Then the girl had said, "Haha, I tricked you," and I explained to her that lying isn't right and what she did was basically stealing. I told her to enjoy the free game and to think first before doing something like that again. After learning that this had scared her for quite a while, I got the dad to bring her in so I could explain that she wasn't in trouble and nobody was mad, just to try to use better judgment next time. The dad went from angry to embarrassed, and I felt guilty for giving a little kid nightmares. The 7-foot-tall Chucky sending kids sprinting for cover whilst violently soiling themselves will never not be incredible to me. Also, that suit sounds like it would be a walking biohazard after 1 week on the job. RIP to those inside. Working as a night watch officer, I had an experience where these sounds were coming from the arcade area, and I was sure someone was breaking in because the life-sized robotic Chuck E. Cheese was moving around on the floor staring at the security camera. 3 days later, I quit the job and have never even went near one of those hellholes again, even if there is a huge shopping mall with Chuck E. Cheese in the lot. Nope, not going to that mall. Looks like I'm driving to the one the next state over. Number 2 in the ball pit. They should make some of the balls brown to add mystery. It'd be like putting M&Ms in a bowl of Skittles, except poop. My coworker got fired. He wasn't too happy about it. In his last act of defiance, he took a crap in the Chuck E. head and left it in the break room. Yep, nothing tells your manager you hate them like punishing an uninvolved third party. Oh god. Okay, not Chuck E. Cheese for the record, but I haven't had a chance to share these stories from a particular family-themed and children's channel-themed hotel. There was poop in the middle of the walkway entrance and nobody noticed for about 20 minutes. Had a customer come and tell me, and I had to look at it to believe it. I saw 2 different families fight over a game of air hockey, and the dads were throwing punches at each other, whilst the kids were yelling at them to stop. Trying to explain to a guest that the reason why their disc for their PS2 wasn't working was because their child had scratched the crap out of it. Of course, the parent refused to believe that that was the case, and their child would never do anything like that. And I had a child tell me that his father had dropped him off here so that he could drink at the bar. He just wanted to play with his dad. I played skee-ball with the kid and rigged the claw game to get him whatever he wanted from it. Worked at Chuck E. Cheese when I was in high school. Here are a couple of things that happened when I was there. First, the longer a pizza sat in the window waiting for table delivery, the less toppings it had when it got to the table. 2. The costume room was the only place without security cameras. It became a whoopee den for the hormonal teenagers working there. And 3. A Chuck E. Cheese adult film tape was filmed in said den. The 4 participants were wearing nothing but the costume heads. 4. On nights when we threw out the raw pizza dough, we'd have pizza dough fights after we closed. A ball of raw dough to the gut hurts like hell. Also, just incidentally, there were a number of gay guys who worked there with me. I got along with them and everything was great. Now, one of these guys who worked there was also a cross-dresser. At the time, I was unaware of this fact. One night, I walked into the manager's office and I see the backside of a woman in a tight pencil skirt. The rear filling in this skirt was easily the best butt 16-year-old me had seen in person. Then the owner of it turns around and I have some of the best female mammary glands 16-year-old me has ever seen staring me in the face. I then hear a horrifyingly deep voice greet me. My jaw dropped, and my eyes darted back and forth from face to chest as I put 2 and 2 together. As I realize this woman is actually my cross-dressing coworker, he grabs my hands and plants them firmly on his rack. They felt great. The end. When I worked there, I pushed a kid who was kicking me while in the suit. He fell and hit his head. The mother complained and I got banned from wearing the suit. Best day ever. It was my night off and I was waiting for my friend to get off her shift. One of the older guys that worked there came in for his shift, tripping on something insane. It was okay for a little while until he had to get in the suit, and then he started throwing candy at an entire party. That was probably the craziest. I worked at a place very similar to Chuck E. Cheese, and we had a bunch of stuff happen. A firearm was left in the toddler area. Some people were caught doing smack at the back of the store. People constantly dropped their kids off at the beginning of the day and used them as daycare centers. We had go-karts and people often threatened us physically because their children weren't tall enough to ride the ride. The list goes on. The place was incredible pizza, by the way. Oh boy! My dad used to manage Chuck E. Cheese when I was a kid. My sister and I would stay late on the weekends after close when they took off the suits of the animatronics for cleaning, and there was a time when we were playing in the showroom and one of the employees thought it would be funny to turn everything on. So, they burst to life, all raw robot parts and furless, bulging eyes and bared teeth. Terrifying. It sent 2 7-year-olds running. Recently, I couldn't even play Five Nights at Freddy's due to deep-rooted trauma from unexpected robot action. No, thank you. That would have been completely worth any trouble you got into for traumatizing your boss's kids. From the sound of some of these stories, firing would be as much of a sweet relief as a financial headache. I have novels worth of stories working there. The most memorable, however, were first, a kid losing an eye, and second, 2 co-workers doing the deed in the basement, and finally, an all-out fistfight between my manager and a customer on my last day. Okay, I'm expanding for those of you who have asked. These are still more or less an abridged version. Towards the end of the night, parents decided they were going to leave the building without their kids, which is against store policy, by the way. Kids tried to leave the building. My manager stops them from leaving, so the mum comes into the building and starts cussing out my manager. A woman in this lady's posse splashes soda in my manager's face, and mum starts pounding on my manager. Next thing you know, they're duking it out MMA style while everyone is watching. Needless to say, cops were called and mum was escorted from the premises. Best last day ever. I guess you had to be there to get the full effect. And as for the couple in the basement, I mean, male and female, how boring, right? And everyone already knew they were doing the deed. I'm assuming they'd already clocked out for the day, considering how no one was looking for them. Well, they couldn't hold in their angsty teenage hormones any longer and made the brilliant decision of taking the Pound Town Express to the basement. How unfortunate that deep into their rendezvous, we, the game tech and I, had to go into the basement for some equipment. Great show, 10 out of 10, would watch again. I don't remember the girl coming back to work, but the guy acted like he was hot stuff right up until the point where he got fired, for unrelated reasons like showing up to work on Green Herb. Some idiot kid brought a shard of plastic in and shanked another kid in the shoulder. Once you're in the playpen, it's prison rules. Never worked there, but this one time I ate there. I think that qualifies as a horror story. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? The one I worked at was apparently the best run Chuck E. Cheese in the area. So we got people coming in up to 2 hours away. So we were always over capacity and understaffed. Here are some of my horror stories. There was a kid who pooped down the slide. Someone had to climb up the slide to clean it while other kids up top kept trying to come down. Don't let your kids run around barefoot there. Every inch of the carpet has been covered in every bodily fluid known to man, and probably some unknown. Look at any kid wearing white socks. See how dirty they are? Those carpets are vacuumed every night, but only washed on Christmas Day, which was the only day we were closed. I did kid check a lot because I was good at faking cheerfulness. There were 3 separate occasions where parents tried to beat me with their strollers, with the kids still inside, just for asking to see their stamps. I'd. Mother fricking I'd. We were down the street from a mosque. Our worst manager was on duty. He sent home everyone, so we only had a skeleton crew. 1 kitchen, 1 GR, 1 cash, no kid check or showroom. He didn't stop people coming in when we hit capacity. It became as densely packed as a mosh pit. People were overflowing into the kitchen. Everyone was angry because we couldn't even get out to serve food. These 3 kids were camping the salad bar and just shoveling into the hard-boiled eggs. They'd eat each entire pot immediately. I got stuck in the back prepping the salad bar, and I couldn't keep up with the egg demand. The entire stock, a week's worth, was gone in an hour. Kids clogged the soda fountain drain and used token cups, with their fingers plugging the holes, to drink the overflowing swill. I don't know what happened after because I was also sent home and I booked every Id off after that. So, just assume all of your worst nightmares about the kitchen are true. The mozzarella sticks, wings, and fries are straight to the oven from the freezer, and they're the safest things to eat. We used to paint finished pizzas with fake garlic butter. I think it was canola oil mixed with salt and MSG. Just a giant vat of that with a big old glorp sloshed all over the pizza. It changed about 3 years ago, I think. And I was never supposed to be in Chucky because I'm too short, but once we were short-staffed and had 3 birthdays on at once, so I got in the Chucky suit for the show, and a kid grabbed the nose and climbed me. I was supporting an 8-year-old's weight with my neck. The cops were called every day, because apparently birthdays make people violent and insane. Once, 2 birthday mums were fighting and one stole the knife from our kitchen and threatened the other mum, had it confiscated, then went back for the knife and repeated it. They were fighting over a single chair. There were dozens of empty chairs 5 feet away. This one time we had a birthday with 75 adults, 50 kids, which started at 8:30 p.m. and ended at 1:30 a.m. We closed at 11. Every game was displaced. Tables were flipped in the showroom. Showroom and game room 3 were 100% covered in neon pink something. Our GR guy licked it and it was frosting. We had to clean 125 people's worth of frosting off 2 areas. The men were also constantly stealing from behind the counter, but the manager was cool with it because of how much the party was bringing in. And the birthday girl? She was 2 years old. This one time I was doing merch, the ticket and prize counter. We had no calculators, so I was running 4 separate guests' accounts mentally. One guest was furious that I took longer than half a second to deal with her constantly changing her mind, and she began berating me for being a, quote, R-word. And in her day, she said they kept people like me out of polite company. Luckily, my manager was beside me and he ripped into her. The women's bathroom always looked like a diaper, pad, and toilet paper nuke went off in it, but whatever, they're easy enough to pick up. The men's room always had crap and an inch of pee on the floor. Men's room had poop writing, poop footprints, yes, foot, not shoe, and more fun stuff. Diapers stuffed in weird gaps in the pipes where they couldn't be removed without tearing them open. So the women's room was always bad, but predictably so, and the men's room was either great or awful, and always a special kind of awful. Most of my memories are just too stupid to live customers, though. Honestly, you stop hearing the screaming and games by your 2nd hour into a shift. Everything they say about the salad bar is true. My God, I didn't think that any other sort of venue could overtake cruise ships for customer-on-customer violence, drunken knife fights, or law enforcement intervention. But I think, in the Charles Entertainment Rat Cheese franchise, we may finally have a contender. I worked at Chuck E. Cheese when I was 16. The employees would routinely steal money from Charles by pocketing the salad bar money and not ringing it up on the cash register. They'd also smoke green herb in the walk-in freezer. I also got cotton candy everywhere when I made it for the first time, and the kids laughed at me. One time I was trying to refill the soda fountain machines and I didn't know how to do it. I made a mess and the kids laughed at me. One time working the ticket toy trade counter, this guy and his girlfriend, probably around 18 or 19, came up to exchange a few tickets. They were short some item, and he asked if his girlfriend showed me her chest if they could have it. I can't remember what the toy was, though. So I don't work there, but I was taking in my baby cousin. I see a kid come down the slide dragging a brown streak because some kid had crapped on the slide and this kid had gone through it. I worked there for a few months before getting a better job at a private school daycare. Honestly, the kids didn't really bother me all that much. The co-workers were awful. Nobody cared about their job and everybody was overworked. I legitimately wanted to make the kids' birthday parties super fun and give them the attention and joke around with them. But instead, I had to be running into the back to clean up the salad bar, run pizzas to other tables, let someone know that they needed to fix a game. I understand multitasking, but they either needed to prioritize giving attention to the birthday parties or taking care of all the other stuff, because it's next to impossible to do both, especially when you work 2 birthday parties simultaneously. The worst, though, was that one of the managers apparently stole money and tried to pin it on me. I was new, and I didn't know I was supposed to count my register by myself, and he told me he was supposed to do it. He stole money from it, and when the other managers confronted him, he acted like he had got no idea where the money was, but it must be this new girl. Fortunately, they didn't believe him, because he had a pattern, and he was fired. He did not go gently into that good night. They had a security watch out for him for a couple of days because he tried to vandalize the place and stuff like that. Everyone's like, the rat suit stories first, so I'll open with those. To be fair, I frickin' loved being Chuck. It was the only real fun part of the job. It gave me a break from talking to horrible people. That being said, and now I present to you a couple of one-line stories. Going down slide in burst open diaper, I said, "Get the frick off the skee-ball machine, everything is broken. Blood. My blood." Walking out from the hallway of Chuck's room, 40-ish ground tackled me hard. That was the first bad one. Kneeling down to hug one kid resulted in about 15 kids pinning me to the ground. While you're supposed to have someone with you, you never do. It took 5 minutes to get clear of that mess. Kid looks at me, cheeks puff up, throws up all over me. Chucky. By the way, we had terrible biohazard disposal. This one kid didn't get to see Chucky. As I was taking the suit off in his party room, the kid was crying to see him. "Don't leave, Chucky! Wait, no!" I'm asked by a coworker through the door if I can just see this last kid, so sure, why not? I put it back on and walk out. The kid loses it, screaming his lungs off. So I go back inside, and as I do, "Wait, Chucky, no!" Those shoes are really comfy when you first get them, and they fall apart really fast. Like while you're out with Chucky, just walking, your shoe pretty much just melts off your foot in no subtle manner. Stop pulling Chucky's fricking nose. Actually, don't touch his nose. Every possible human bodily fluid has touched that nose. Also, yes, it's hot. No, there's no AC. Stop asking. Every service industry business has those customers, be they a specific social group, age group, or otherwise. They lie, cheat, and steal when they get the chance. One group of these people had a mum tell her kids to hop over the ticket counter when no one was watching and steal prizes, bolted to the car afterwards. When the manager caught them, they sped off and complained to our corporate office that they were falsely accused of stealing, despite our cameras having evidence. They were comped a free visit. Another group would keep jumping to the top of the skee-ball machine to put the balls in. You're not a frickin' genius, kid. There's supposed to be tilt sensors that deactivate the gameplay when you do that, but I'll be damned if anything in that place worked. Nothing was fixed by the guy who was supposed to fix them. Hey, Matt, if you're hearing this, frick you. I'd take their tickets that they won for jumping on the machine as I'd caught them in the act. And the mums were furious. This one complained to the manager, who buckled and made me give them. Bull frickin' crap. Same day, the Tower of Power's dome was smashed open, and kids reached down and grabbed and stole over 3,000 tickets. I had no way to prove that they did it. Fixing that frickin' yellow ski ball, which had tokens jammed like no frickin' tomorrow, like always, I pulled my hand up and got it caught on a jagged piece of broken metal. 3 stitches. I think the BBP is still in that machine. And lastly, don't be in Chuck E. Cheese past midnight. I got stuck cleaning some huge messes, and I swear to God that Animatronic watches you from the stage. Again, I've had some nightmare restaurant jobs in my time, but none of them, and I mean none of them, compare to what seems to be a normal shift at the Rat House. And that's our third story of a kid lubricating the slide with his own brown matter. I knew a girl who worked at one. She said never eat at the salad bar. She's seen people sneeze in it, amongst other disgusting crap. I had to dress up in the frickin' rat suit and get my butt kicked by a group of middle school boys. I am not a large girl by any means, so these kids were bigger than me and you could hardly see in that damned suit. Also had to call the cops a couple of times when people forgot one or more of their kids there. Never worked there, but when I was younger, the Chuck E. Cheese guy got really aggressive with hugging the kids at my local one. Turns out they'd never hired that guy, it was just some guy off the street who liked hugging kids. Never going there again. I was a Chuck E. Cheese star cast member for a while. 15 minutes before I was going to leave, a child went number 1 inside one of the crawl tubes. There was a general manager on site who proceeded to tell me if I didn't clean it up, I shouldn't bother coming back. Needless to say, I crawled up through alternating plastic floors to find out it was not only pee, but also poop. Since it was Chuck E. Cheese, we didn't use normal cleaning products that would have made the cleanup easy. We had a non-toxic sanitizer and a pink cloth that was porous. After spraying the turd multiple times to sanitize it, I went in to scoop it up. This was when I realized I'd made a terrible mistake. Stuff was flowing through the holes on that porous wipe. It was like one of those toys with the Play-Doh hair. Once the job was finished, they gave me 5 minutes to eat in the break closet. I worked for an answering service a few years ago, and I took a call on the personal injury law firm account from one woman who wanted to sue Chuck E. Cheese because her kids drank hand sanitizer from one of the many pump stations. I don't miss that job. Alright, I might be stupid, or maybe it's because I'm from England, but I always thought Chuck E. Cheese was just a fake restaurant used in different programs. Late to the party here, but what the heck. Our local Charles Entertainment Cheese used to sell beers until they let an underage employee drink after his shift. Then said employee proceeded to kill someone in a drunk driving accident leaving work. Also, I used to assist my friend who played there while we were both high as kites. Good times. My mum wore the rat costume when she was in high school. Once she was out with the kids and tripped and her head came off. The costume head, I assume. Maybe not so horrible for her, but I'm pretty sure some of the kids were traumatized.
Doctors, nurses who deliver babies, what are some of the strange/funny things people have screamed while giving birth? When my brother was born, they had to use forceps to get him out. My mom saw them and screamed, "Those are salad tongs! You are not putting any kitchenware in there!" When I gave birth and they pulled out the forceps, I thought they looked like ice tongs, not salad tongs. Much bigger. The doctor who controlled the pain meds saw my face and asked if I wanted to remember any of this. I said, nope. Last thing I remember. My mother's labor was extremely short. I was born within an hour. So that means that she went from experiencing minimal pain to extreme pain with little time to adjust. When my dad was driving her to the hospital, he unfortunately had to stop for gas. He went in to pay, and just then an elderly man in a wheelchair stopped him, asking him to buy cigarettes for him as the store was not wheelchair accessible. My mom then proceeded to lean out of the window yelling, "Don't help the cripple!" We have never let her forget that one. Edit. Didn't think anyone would actually see this. I'm glad everyone got a good laugh out of it. I'm sorry to laugh at your mom, but damn, that was funny. My mom had a similar quick labor due to medical issues. 15 minutes from first contractions to labor. There was an accident on the side of the road and my father slowed down while going past and my mom screamed, "Screw them, hurry up!" Epic fail. Last trimester, keep at least half a tank in the car. If we had to stop for gas, I'd have killed someone. I imagine the mom from Malcolm in the Middle as the pregnant woman yelling that. I believe at that point you can say, "Sorry dude, my wife is in labor," and any normal human being will go, "Okay." My roommate and I just finished our labor and delivery rotation in July. During one of the births she was helping out in, the mom and the dad were separated but still good friends. So while this woman is pushing out her baby, she begins to half tell/half scream that my roommate should date her ex/the baby daddy. The conversation went something like this. "Mom, you should really, go out with, him sometime. He's really fun." "Dad, I wouldn't mind getting some drinks sometime. What are you doing this evening?" No, she did not go out with him. That would make a heck of a love story. He actually said, "What are you doing this evening? Shouldn't you be with your newborn baby?" I get that they weren't together, but still. Seriously though, my friend, there's a time and a place. Paramedic here delivered a baby for a lady who did not realize she was pregnant and called us for abdominal pain. Patient: "You're an idiot. I am not pregnant." Me: "Well, I can see a head crowning." Patient: "That must be a tumor." The tumor was a healthy baby girl. Mom was totally sweet afterwards, by the way. Holy crap, was she a big lady? That's crazy. My mother-in-law didn't know she was pregnant with my husband until she was 7.5 months along. She said she thought it was well-packed fat. Yeah, she is a big lady. Her wedding pictures she was 8 months pregnant in, and you couldn't tell. When my sister was in labor, she was screaming, and our mom was trying to be comforting, saying, "It'll be okay, take some deep breaths, it'll be over soon." Then my sister looks up at our mom and says, "You have no idea what this is like. You just wouldn't understand, Mom." I hope your mom never let her forget saying it. My sister told me while she was in labor that she changed her mind and wanted to go home. Sorry sister, too late. Plot twist, both children are adopted, only the sister knows though. Patient, fully dilated, started pushing, then changed her mind. "I don't want to do this, I'm going home." And then tried to get off the table. This happens. I can't believe this happens. Fear 101. Question that I don't want to Google for the risk of pictures. What does it mean, dilated? I've never understood this. Edit. I got the answer already. I'm gonna get nightmares if y'all go into any more detail. My friend's mom, who's a midwife, told me that once she found a woman in labor walking around the ward with her bags packed, saying she's changed her mind and was going home. "You delivered my baby girl. Sorry about trying to leave. At the time I just felt that way." I did this. I was only half dilated though. I just said I wanted to come back another day. My husband said he didn't think it worked that way. He was right, but man did I beg to go home and just put it off another few days. The epidural kicked in and I was good after that. My mom tried this when she was having me, but my nan was there and told her, "Get back on that bed now." I'm being induced in about 14 hours? What should I do instead? When I hit transition, I started crying. I don't want kids. I don't even like kids. EMT who did a birth on the side of the road. Woman shouted, "Screw me," during a contraction, and the husband casually replied, "That's how we got into this mess." I had a very hard time containing myself. Pretty sure my husband said this exact thing to me while I was delivering our daughter. My husband and I have a tendency to enjoy witty banter during labor. It's just how we are. During the labor of our youngest, 27 hours in, he said something and I replied, "Do you want to push him out?" Without missing a beat, he replied, "I already did and thousands more like him." Our nurse was expecting me to be angry, but I totally cracked up. He's so funny. Husband already kicking out the dad jokes and his child isn't even fully born yet. I said that to the doctor during her prenatal exam. "Just lie back and relax. This will only take a minute." That's how this whole thing started, doctor. One lady was too posh to swear when in pain from contractions. She just said, "Jeepers creepers." I hadn't laughed out loud at this threat until I got to this one. That's the safe word my wife and I use. I held off on swearing, but at one point I thought my husband and I were alone in the room. That gas makes your mind kinda cloudy. And I asked him where the fudge the chick who was coming to do the epidural was. The midwife was still in the room. She thought it was pretty funny. I had the pleasure of assisting a woman in the most beautiful, textbook perfect natural birth ever to take place in a hospital. In her birth plan, she warned us that she might do some cussing, to which I said, "You couldn't offend me if you tried. Yell whatever you like." What does she blurt out while pushing? "Owie." When I was born, my dad didn't know that babies are usually born face down. And as I was coming out, he screams, "Oh my God, she doesn't have a face." That made me laugh so hard my dog came over to see what was going on. I have tears running down my face right now. Thank you so much for sharing this. I was high on meds at the time, and I was begging for barbecue ribs in between contractions. "Come on, honey, the nurses will never know." They were standing right there. "Did you get the barbecue ribs?" I wasn't on meds and still thought it was perfectly fine to say, "Honey, leave now, run down the road and bring me back a burrito with guac and hots." I really wanted a burrito. My mom told my dad to get her Taco Bell and he said, "No, you're in labor." Apparently when my aunt was giving birth, she was all jokes. Very angry jokes, but jokes nonetheless. "Knock knock, who's there? The baby? Not yet." I'm picturing a woman in labor bellowing this angrily and just cracking up. Not a doctor, but a father. When my first child was born, his head was kind of misshapen, and when the doctor lifted him up to show my wife, she yelled, "Why does he look like a raptor?" I lost it. My mom almost punched her best friend when I came out with my head all funny. My mom said, "How does she look?" And her friend's response was, "Kind of like E.T." My mom didn't have any sense of humor about it. I had bright orange hair when I was born. It's since softened out to a nice strawberry blonde, but baby pictures are pretty interesting to look at. My mom always says that when I popped out, my dad just started giggling and calling me Carrot Top. I had to be kept at the hospital for a while due to some weird stuff, and soon all the doctors and nurses were talking about baby girl Carrot Top. My mom was not happy about the nickname. My dad told me they thought I was a girl all the way up to birth. I came out as a C-section. The doctor goes, this one's got some extra equipment. Mine's the opposite. I came out all girl and my dad told the doctor he must have dropped something and to look again. My wife told me in a satanic voice to get better ice chips. These suck. I'm not sure what the quality issue was, but I ran and got her a different cupful. The nurses kept trying to give me ice chips and telling my boyfriend to give them to me between pushing. And at one point, I got pissed and told them, no, I don't want it. I was too busy pushing a baby out of my vagina to eat any ice chips. I'm a nurse, but I'm also a mom. My husband told me when I was breathing the laughing gas, I screamed, I'm Lady Darth Vader as I was pushing. Then I asked the doctor if he felt my tonsils when he had his arm up there. These are my coworkers. I hope they let you live it down. What memories you made with them. Their time will come. I made this account purely to tell you that I'm in a room of sleeping people and woke them all up with my laughing because this is the funniest thing I've ever read. Thank you so much. I'm a nurse, and one of the strangest things that I've seen happen while someone is giving birth is one patient decided to tell her boyfriend that it wasn't his baby. That made the whole room silent and the boyfriend just left without saying a thing. My wife worked as a nurse near a military base and had so many women grab her during labor when the husband would step out to go to the bathroom or was across the room and say, tell him the baby is early or late. I had an affair while he was deployed and it's not his. I always felt bad for them. An ex-girlfriend did this to me. Dated her for about 7 months and the baby was supposedly 2 months premature. Kid came out with a full head of hair, lifted his head and looked around the room. I asked for a blood test. Mom of the girlfriend cursed me royally. Turns out kid wasn't mine. And I never saw that woman since that day. During labor, about a half an hour before the god-awful ripping and tearing, I was losing my mind. My older sister panicked and sort of ran around the room. My mom, the birth coach, said to my sister to give me a focal point, something to concentrate on so I didn't jump out of the nearest window. My sister lifted her shirt and showed us her boobs. Hilarity and awful pain ensued. Way to take the tension out of a difficult moment. After a long contraction, I said quietly, I'm gonna set everyone in this room on fire. Everyone laughed, including the nurse, but I think my devoutly Christian mother-in-law started to cry. It's times like this that I wish I was a woman, so that I can scream wildly inappropriate and zany things during my pregnancy. Then I say that again and realize I just wished I could give birth roughly aware of how painful it might be. I'm good. Not exactly during labor, but right after. I had a very bad tear during natural childbirth, which meant lots of stitches. Add to that, it was training day for one of the med students, and it was taking a long time. A really long time. Finally, I looked down between my knees and asked, what are you doing? Are you guys weaving a friendship bracelet down there? Both doctors, the intern, and the med student burst out laughing so hard they had to stop working. Apparently, there was some issue with how the intern was stitching me up, and things had gotten tense. This lightened the mood quite a bit. I'm sure this helped the med student feel a lot better in what was a very tense moment for them. After I had my son, I was pretty wasted on all the pain meds they'd given me. I looked up at my husband and said, honey, Condoleezza Rice is out there waiting for me. Tell her I can't come out to play today. I just had a baby. Condoleezza Rice must spend a lot of time traveling people's hallucinations. When my mom was in the hospital, for other reasons, she was yelling at Condoleezza Rice to stop trying to give her cigarettes. I had a C-section and was pretty out of it. When they held up my daughter and said, here's your baby, I responded, that's not mine. I've never seen it before in my life. Take it to the lost and found. I've never seen it before in my life. Well, there's some accuracy in that statement. As a nursing student, I was watching a planned C-section. The procedure was being performed by the senior resident. Everything seemed to be going well when I heard the resident mutter, whoops, and I looked up and saw blood squirting out, pulsing. She fixed the artery very quickly, but it obviously freaked out mom and dad. Everything turned out okay for mom and the baby. Whoops is definitely not something you want to hear from your surgeon or anyone similar. I had a dentist say whoops as he drilled through my tongue. Good thing tongues heal well. As someone with a C-section scheduled soon, this would scare the ever-living crap out of me. First words to my son, you better be awesome because that hurt a lot. For her sake, I really do hope he was. We hired a doula for our first kid 4 years ago. She told us a story that I still laugh about. She was with a couple that had been told they were having a daughter as their first kid. So, like first-time parents, they outdid themselves with everything pink, sparkly, and frilly, the whole 9 yards. Mom goes into labor and they call the doula to come in to be there for the birth. Mom's pushing, dad is cheerleading nervously, and the baby pops out and the doula notices that the sonogram tech that said they were having a girl messed up. The dad is too busy to notice anything is amiss. So the doula tells the dad to to do a finger and toe count to clue him in. So the dad looks at the baby, sees 10 fingers, 10 toes, and 1 penis. Now, he'd been told he was having a daughter for the past 6 months and sees a penis, and the first thing he screams is, "Oh my god, my daughter has a penis!" Just give him a minute, he'll figure it out. A friend's mom is a nurse. Nurse, have you seen the mucus plug? Woman in labor. Yeah, that moron went out to have a cigarette. Sounds like he'll be having a talking to when he gets back. A young couple, mom and dad, were both around 18 if I recall correctly. First baby for them both. Mom's pushing and dad is doing this awkward jig, wanting to be helpful, but not really knowing how to be helpful. At one point I say, "Okay, we can see the head now, still a while to go," and dad jumps up, runs to the counter, puts on rubber gloves, and gets into football receiving position like 10 feet away from mom's legs. We all burst out laughing and he was very embarrassed to learn that babies do not shoot out across the room to be caught like a football. Aw, buddy. Well, the important thing is that's what he thought would happen, and he was ready. Quality dad material right there. When my mother was pregnant, she and my dad decided to have an amnio. A stand-in doctor was there the day she found out the results, and despite my mom's instructions that she did not want to be told the sex, the doctor congratulated her on having a healthy little boy. My mom freaked out and decided not to tell my dad so as to not ruin the surprise. Fast forward to the day of my birth, I'm brought into this bright world without a penis. The doctors congratulate my mother on her little girl. My mom responds by yelling, "You've got to be freaking kidding me." Silence from everyone in the room. The doctor then has a serious chat with my mom about loving me even though I'm a girl, etc, etc. Turns out the amnio results were mixed up with another woman of the same name. Yeah, quite the confuzzle. She wanted a surprise. Sometimes you get what you wish for. He didn't tell her the sex, he told her the opposite sex. Not a doctor, but during the birth of my firstborn, I kept screaming, "I gotta poop, I gotta poop." Actually, it was just her head creating pressure as it was coming down the birth canal. It felt just like an 8-pound poop. Same thing happened to my mom with me. Apparently, she kept trying to walk around, telling everybody that she really needed to take a dump as she was in labor. That was the worst feeling than labor pain for me. The feeling that you have to poop so badly, but it just won't come out, and that dire urge to poop was there the whole time I was pushing. So 30 minutes of fighting a monster poop on top of a bowling ball forcing its way out of my vagina. No bueno. No one was responding to the call button as my mom was giving birth, so she yelled, "Do something, honey." So my dad ran out into the hall and screamed at the top of his lungs, "It's showtime and I'm not a very good catcher." When I read "It's showtime," I read it as Beetlejuice. Made it even funnier. The delivery nurse for my son's birth was about 4'11". She kept talking to me and I couldn't see her over my belly and legs. It was really frustrating. She said, "Do you want me to pull down the mirror so you can see?" I was like, "I don't need the play-by-play, let's just do this." I apologized afterwards and she laughed. That was me. The nurses kept trying to romanticize the moment and make it memorable, and I just wanted it to be over so I could go home. I remember they brought the mirror over to me to see my daughter's head crowning in order to motivate me. My cousin started laughing at the face I made when I saw it. Just glad they took the mirror away after that, and glad I didn't get to see anything else. My fiance is a doctor and my mother's a nurse, so I'm claiming the titles by association for the purposes of this thread. My mother was unexpectedly having her 4th child and chose not to find out the sex. We like surprises everywhere apparently. For some reason, she became convinced it was a boy and would have bet the house on it. In the delivery room, they hand the baby to my dad and he joyfully tells my mom that they have a new baby girl. Mom, what? No, check again. Dad, I'm pretty sure it's a girl, honey. Mom, you're not looking hard enough. My older sister cried when she found out I was a boy, and both of my older brothers danced in jubilation. Parents who have disowned or genuinely stopped loving your child, what happened? I disowned my father. I don't believe it's nearly as difficult a decision as disowning a child, but it was tough. I grew up in an upper middle class, perfect nuclear family. My parents were high school sweethearts, my dad was an operator at an oil refinery, and my mom was an accountant turned stay-at-home mom. I'm a middle child. I have a 3-year older brother and a 3-year younger brother. When my older brother was about 10, my dad's drinking got out of hand and became extremely physically abusive. A few years later, my mom divorced him after 23 years of marriage because she was afraid for our lives. My dad went off the deep end, started doing drugs, stealing, etc. Was involved in a few hit and runs. My older brother, who had received the brunt of the physical abuse, was manipulated into a relationship with my dad for a few years. To a lesser extent, so was I. He seemed to take an interest in us for the first time since we were little, but in hindsight, it was just more manipulation and gaslighting. We won't go into all the details, but my brothers and I eventually got wind of just what what kind of sketchy stuff he was involved in. My little brother and I, who both had aspirations to get into law enforcement, cut him out of our lives completely. My older brother took a while longer. He was a kid who always just wanted his dad to love him, and so he was wearing blinders. He did eventually see the light and cut my dad out as well. A few years ago, my dad was living with his mom. My grandma had been manipulated by him for years, and they had a symbiotic codependent relationship. She was a prescription addict and he was an everything addict. My grandma had a reverse mortgage on her home. She was diagnosed with lung cancer and given 6 months to live and moved into a nursing home. My dad kept squatting at her house despite the bank coming to rightfully claim the home. Cops got involved and he was arrested. My grandma slipped and fell 2 days after moving into the nursing home. She developed a brain bleed and died a few days later. My dad had a seizure his first night in jail and was brought to the hospital, where it was determined he had a burst brain aneurysm. The doctors theorized that the aneurysm was a result of his drug use, and when he was scuffing with the cops during the arrest, his increased blood pressure and/or jarring caused it to burst. Now he's in a nursing home and functioning at about a 6-year-old's level. He has some inkling that he's messed up royally and it is all his fault, but he doesn't understand the specifics. He can kind of communicate and holds conversations, but they're bizarre and wander all over, and a lot of very strange words make their way in. I visit him a few times per year. I only do it because the person he became with addiction is dead. I believe that karma caught up to him and he's earned his hell. I truly would not shed a tear if he dropped dead tomorrow. He's been dead to me for a decade. I do have some compassion for a sad, confused 58-year-old man who's in a depressing nursing home and doesn't understand why he has no visitors. He knows he has kids and a wife. He doesn't understand they're divorced. And sometimes he even knows he has grandkids he's never been allowed to meet. So he doesn't understand why nobody visits him. I've started occasional visits not because I have any interest in having a relationship with him, but because unfortunately the doctor saved him when his aneurysm burst, and we're left with a person who's paying for crimes he doesn't know he committed in a world he doesn't understand. He sometimes cries when he asks to see pictures of that little boy, my nephew, his grandson, and I have to explain yet again why he isn't allowed to meet him. He asks me questions about that cop, my little brother, whose name he can't remember. He looks so proud when I tell him that his son is rising through the ranks and just became a canine officer. It's like a shard of the dad he was 25 years ago has surfaced, and everything in between only exists as a convoluted fever dream. It tears my heart open as a human to see his suffering, but in a really twisted, sick way, it gives me satisfaction that his actions caught up to him, which makes me hate myself even more than I already did. I doubt anyone has read this. It wasn't supposed to be a novel, but that's how I disowned my dad. Then kinda developed a minimal relationship with the ghost of his former humanity that now occupies his body. My heart goes out to people who have had to disown a child. I was extremely fortunate to have an incredible mom and extended family to support my brothers and me, yet I'm still damaged from my time with him. Having to choose between compassion and love for a flawed person and your own or your other loved one's physical and mental well-being rips something open inside of you and leaves you permanently scarred. I read it, and it moved me deeply. You're an excellent writer, and I encourage you to keep sharing your words. Thank you, and I wish you and your family the best. My mother disowned me and my sister. She was a mentally ill, abusive alcoholic. She tormented us. I bore the brunt of it as I got older in an attempt to shield my sister. I was abused in every way a child can be. Mentally, emotionally, physically, and sexually. My boyfriend helped me get out. Well, forced my hand in leaving, and I'm so thankful for that. I'll never forget watching my sister get smaller in my rearview mirror, bawling her eyes out. That was one of the hardest moments of my life. I was leaving her there with my mother. We had tried getting help before, but my mother was a master manipulator. One day, after beating the tar out of me and ripping my hair out, we had gone with my sister's grandmother to the police, and me and my sister were berated and treated like criminals. Told we were ungrateful, spoiled brats. I didn't think calling CPS would help. A year later, my sister's grandmother and father begged me to help my sister. She was suicidal and miserable. They needed me to make some statements and talk to CPS. I was already low contact with my mother, but knew this would have serious consequences. I didn't care. I loved my sister more than anything. It was awful, and we were both disowned by my mother and most of her side of our family. It ended up being the best thing to happen to me. Me and my sister were both diagnosed with CPTSD and are trying to heal. I struggled with alcoholism myself and am almost 2 years sober. I'm happy with my life and where I am, and know that what I've been through has made me so strong. My sister is struggling with substances herself right now, and all I can do is pray and be there for her. I hope she can heal, but she's so very angry right now, which I get because I've been there. I hope she'll snap out of it like I did. I'm not a parent. I've never disowned a child. My parents disowned my oldest sister. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. My oldest sister had a horrible relationship with my father. Blames me for getting in the way of their relationship. She had her first baby to spite him when she was 16 years old. My father refused to give her any money because she met a deadbeat child predator and got pregnant again and again and again. She constantly put herself and deadbeat before the kids. Dad would send money to girls for Christmas and birthdays and never heard a thing. He finally gave up. She's 30, has 6 daughters, and lives in a mobile home in North Carolina. We hadn't seen or heard from my sister until June of this year. My oldest niece contacted me asking to come to Florida, where I live, for the summer to get her and her sisters out of the trailer. I agree, contact sister, and she agrees. I set up plane tickets and organized the rooms they'll stay in. When they got here, they were completely disheveled, clothes visibly dirty, smelled foul, so covered in lice that my white towels stained gray from removing them. My niece informed me that they had been without water and electricity for 6 months. They live in a 2-bedroom mobile home. There are holes in the roof, bugs and rats everywhere. As a family, we decide the girls aren't going back to North Carolina. We tell my sister to come to my parents' house in Florida to get her life together and get back on her feet. She refused because Deadbeat is not invited. Ironically, she found out that Deadbeat is cheating on her. She confronts him and he kicks her out of their crap hole trailer. Deadbeat said, "I would rather be homeless than live with you." Sister now works for the dollar store and doesn't pull her weight with kids. At least the girls are safe now. Edit. I never really finished my point with the story. My parents had disowned my oldest sister when she moved to North Carolina with Deadbeat for 6 years until my niece reached out to me through Facebook. I had never even met my 2 youngest nieces until this event. I regret turning my back on my sister. I really hate her and what she's put her babies through, but if we stayed in her life for those 6 years, we maybe could have prevented this. I took custody of a 4 and a 2-year-old the week my son was born because my sister's a heroin junkie. Much respect to you and your family. My siblings and I have stopped interacting with my oldest brother. We found out that years earlier he had molested at least 2 boys. He was an adult at the time. He showed no remorse and turned the story around to say that those boys were at fault. It was so disgusting to watch someone you grew up with treat people so poorly and show such a blatant disregard for others. The good news is that the remaining 4 siblings have become closer, and we are now able to appreciate the good we see in each other. It's true when they say if you could pick your family, it would look much different than it is. My parents disowned my oldest sister. She always struggled growing up more than us. She became a teen mom with a bad older dude, partied a lot, etc. But my parents helped her a lot. They do okay for themselves, but had a no co-signing rule for all 6 of my siblings and I. Still, they co-signed for her house so she could get a head start. She didn't pay the mortgage for almost 3 years before my mom got served in front of all the other nurses at her work. My parents worked tirelessly to try to work out deals where my sister and her family kept the house and got some leniency, but to no avail because my sister never showed up for court dates. During this time, she paid $12,000 for IFE and got pregnant with her 5th kid. When my mom demanded some of the money back, she accused my dad and my brother of beating her sons when my parents took them to Disney World. He didn't, and said she'd file a police report if he asked for money again. They kept asking since it wasn't true. She awkwardly joined us for Christmas and punched my brother in the face during the meal for humiliating her oldest son by asking him if he wanted to work in my brother's company for good pay. Her oldest son is in and out of jail and my brother was trying to help him after his release, but her son said he didn't want a job and got mad. She then called the cops and told them the same brother had illegal guns in his truck, and they came on Christmas night and searched his truck. No guns found. Needless to say, she is not welcome anywhere near any of us, and my mom still cries about it, but refuses to talk to her again. My heart actually aches for your mom. I hope she got more than just disownment. My mother and her sister were both adopted into a great family. Recently, my grandfather fell ill and we were told to prepare to say goodbye. So the family gathered. My grandmother has had a hard time with her memory since she had a brain hemorrhage, but she welcomed my aunt into her home during this tough time. Whilst my grandfather was in his final week, Wendy, the aunt, took my grandmother's ATM card and proceeded to spend well over $1,000 on herself and get herself a motel room. She also attempted to steal their car. When my uncles found out, she basically disappeared into the wind. After my grandfather passed and his funeral was all sorted, my grandmother went to an attorney to write Wendy out of any inheritance she would get from their estate when she passes. She didn't press any formal charges because the whole process would have been lengthy and more painful for her. She didn't need the extra stress. I'm pretty sure one of my uncles also threatened Wendy to make sure she stayed away from my grandmother from now on too. It seems extra appalling when it happens during a difficult time for the family, but it seems also like these kinds of people wait to strike in these high-stress situations. While most of the family were burying my husband's grandmother, his cousin broke into her house and stole her checkbook. Meanwhile, on my side of the family, my cousin ransacked her mother's jewelry and tried to break into a safe in the house while said aunt was in the hospital on her deathbed. Honestly, how do these people live with themselves? I love my son, but he abused me. When he turned that violence onto his sister by choking her, I had to say goodbye. Me too. I caught him when he lunged for her, routinely attacked us. He went to his mom's where he attacked his new stepfather until the stepdad left. My son and I don't speak. You did the right thing. I wish my parents had been as brave as you. Thank you for protecting your daughter. My ex-wife disowned my son. We both married young when I was in the military, high school sweethearts. She became pregnant 6 months into our marriage. I don't think she connected with him at all after he was born. The most she did with him was Instagram photo shoots where she painted herself as #1 mommy. When he turned 3, I left the military. A year after that, she ran for the hills. I remember it like it was yesterday. I sat down with her at a local restaurant to talk divorce plans. We split all of our financials and material items down the middle. We finally got to custody for my kiddo, something I dreaded to discuss because fathers never gain custody in my area, and she tells me, I want absolutely no responsibility. I was taken aback, and I asked if she was sure. She was. That one sentence hurt me more than anything else that had happened during that time. My biological father wanted nothing to do with me, and now I was seeing it happen with my own child, but with his mother. I received full custody and she married within a year afterwards. She had another child too. Her parents try their best to be a part of his life, but she still does her best to avoid him. He's 7 now and used to it, but I know it weighs heavily on him. It just really sucks, but it's life, I guess. It's better she isn't there if she never wanted to be. He may not know that now, but he'll probably figure it out as he grows up. That's vile. Your son is lucky to have you. I'm sorry that you both have to live with this. I was raised by a single mom. It definitely messes you up a little bit at first, but you grow up and life goes on. I was bitter towards my dad, to say the least. Wondered why I wasn't ever good enough, but then you reach a point when you realize they weren't good enough for you. If she was in his life, it would probably be more damaging to him. My mom was a super mom and brought peace into my life. Gave me all the love in the world. You're the super dad and he's better off just having you. I'm 38 years old. Trust me, one super parent is enough in life. Not my kid, but my sister I raised for several years. I was a senior in high school when my parents had my sister. Completely unexpected. They were 58 and 55. I never really got to know her much as I went away to college when she was 5 months old and was in the Air Force by the time she was 1.5. I saw her twice on leave and got pics, but the way life was working out, we never really got time together. Fast forward, our dad dies when she's 2, and my stepmother's raising her. She was a terrible parent, like the kind that saw one of her kids run away at 16 to halfway across the country, another run away at 15 and get married, and one that is just a loon who spent his life bouncing around whatever hot MLM program was out there as a career. She also convinced my dad to send me to a Pray Away the Gay camp in Tennessee when I was 15. So when my sister was 11 and begging for help, I took leave and went to her. Surprisingly, my stepmonster was happy to get attorneys to drop the paperwork for me to become my sister's guardian and even pay for it. So I'm raising my sister and things are okay until she's about 14. Then I caught her doing these videos online talking dirty to get guys to jerk off. So that was a mess of trying to get those down and suing the people that hired her to do them. Ran away for a week, hiding out at a friend's house. Found her when she was caught shoplifting. A B&E charge at 14, trying to steal the phone of a boy she was dating to see if he was talking to other girls. It happened on base and I managed to talk it out of being a bigger thing. A second B&E charge with friends breaking into the NCO club to try to steal beer. I was told I had to leave base housing at that point. My security clearance was suspended to make sure she wasn't putting me in a position I could be compromised. Still 14. Arrested with stolen military ID trying to get into a bar. 15. Escapes rehab. 15, escapes rehab again. 16, things seem good and she's taking school seriously. At 18, she was accepted to RISD, graduated with honors, and had an actual decent paying job with a web company with benefits and everything. Started getting stoned a lot and lost her job, sold her car to pay bills, lost her apartment, still hadn't bothered looking for work, got her trust fund at 24, blew over $400K in 2 years with nothing to show for it, had multiple cases against her for drugs, was restricted to the state but decided to go follow fish around anyway and sell Molly, got picked up for hooking and possession out of state, was returned to Rhode Island where she was detained and somehow released pending trial yet again. While awaiting trial, she was caught holding enough package for sale heroin to qualify as a distribution charge. By then, I hadn't heard from her for almost 7 years, and only managed to keep up with her reading the police blotter or from the occasional attorney that she had contact me to verify that I would pick up her legal tab. I wouldn't. Against any logic, she was out of prison in under 3 years. I heard she dimed a bunch of people out to make it happen. She showed up at my house asking for a place to stay. I said I couldn't have her in my house, but I'd get her a place for the night and then help her locate a place of her own. That night, she broke into my house, nearly got shot by me while doing it, and tried to spin some story that she was looking for something she dropped in my house earlier that day, despite never actually entering my house. I told her she had to go. She threatened she would call DCFS and tell them I was abusing my kids if I didn't go with her to an ATM and give her all the money I could withdraw. I told her to GTFO before I exercised the castle defense law and dropped her. Took out a restraining order the next day, and in doing so, found out she once again left state when she wasn't supposed to have and violated her parole. So back to the clink. Since then, she's been dead to me. Wow. Just wow. That was a roller coaster of emotions. ER doctors and nurses, have any of your patients surprised you with their amount or lack of pain tolerance? I had a patient with an open tib fib, the bones in the lower leg sticking out, and below that looks like jelly, trying to walk, apparently unaware of how bad his leg was. Of course, he was incredibly drunk at the time. This happened to a guy in my judo class. Spiral fracture on both bones. I didn't see it, but they described it like this. Both of the people were white belts and inexperienced. One attempted osotogari, but instead of stepping past to offset balance and then sweeping his opponent's leg out, he stepped alongside to offset balance and stomped on the leg that all the other guy's weight was on. There was a snap and he went down. He waited 10 seconds or so and said, "I think my leg is broken." Then he briefly tried moving and instead said, "Yep, it's broken." Then he just sat there talking to us calmly while occasionally looking at his ankle. The EMTs were surprised at how calm he was too. Working in a hospital has taught me the downside of abusing painkillers/drugs. Patients constantly come in here with long-term substance abuse issues, and now that they are actually hurt, MVC, broken bones, etc., you can give them enough drugs to put down a horse and they still feel everything. This is one of my biggest fears. I had major back surgery when I was 14, so I pretty much live with constant pain. I will do everything I can to avoid taking a Vicodin so that when I get older and I really start to hurt, I haven't built up a tolerance. The only thing that sucks about it is that the pills expire before I use them all, and so when I really do need them, getting a new doctor to prescribe them is really hard. They always try to treat me like a junkie trying to score, and while it is understandable, it really pisses me off. My husband is a recovering addict, started out abusing pain medication after back surgery and moved on to heroin later, and we found this to be true. He's 5 years clean. Last year, we had a grease fire in our house and he ended up getting second and third degree burns over 50% of his arms. At the ER and the trip to the burn center, he kept trying to not let them give him opiate pain medications for obvious reasons. When he finally let them give him something, it was 4 times a normal dose because of his tolerance to the pain medication. Even then, it only helped him for about 10 minutes before the pain was back. It's been a long recovery from his burn. He ended up having a skin graft done over the worst part of the burn on his left hand. And the pain management part has been the hardest part for both of us. He's still on pain medication for the aching in the graft site, but he has come so far. I was a tech in the ER when the EMTs brought in an elderly woman with what they said was a sprained ankle. She had slipped while mopping a floor at work and her coworker had called it in. Turned out she had broken both of the bones in the lower part of her leg, but was sweetly chatting with us. I was impressed as soon as I saw the x-rays. EMTs had no idea and had splinted her ankle over where the bones were broken. Typically, broken bones in the legs, unless there's a huge amount of angulation or displacement, do not cause a ton of pain unless moved. We see that often in the old people with hip fractures as well. They're usually sitting there still and having no pain, but the second you try to move it, they're in excruciating pain. Same goes with trying to bear weight. I broke a bone in my foot and didn't go to the doctor until a month after. The sprain wasn't healing. The bone set improperly on its own and it causes me pain. My parents were too cheap to pay for the surgery and I can't afford it now. ER doc here. 50-year-old guy with a massive heart attack just lying there chilling. Ask him his pain level, deadpan, just a little. 5-year-old boy with both forearm bones fractured and dislocated, playing on iPad with the other arm. 60-year-old lady slips, falls, and destroys pelvic bone. Just wants 1 Tylenol and scooches out of bed wanting to walk home. After much convincing, she begrudgingly accepted that might not be a great idea. There are some pretty tough people out there. Why are heart attacks always described as massive? I never heard of any other severity. Always massive. Doesn't anybody ever get a regular-sized heart attack? Fire/medic here. Farmers seem to be tough. One time, a guy pulled up into the front ramp, got out of his truck, and walked up holding his severed forearm in his other arm. Get him in the truck, take off. Along the way, he states he lived down the road and wanted to get to us quickly. When asked why he didn't call 911, he replied, "I just cut my arm, I ain't dying." Also had a Battle of the Bulge vet tell me he didn't need a blanket. It was -7 with wind chill. My grandma grew up on a farm in Alberta and was unbelievably tough. She once broke her finger by slamming it in a car door and splinted it herself with popsicle sticks and duct tape. Later, her appendix burst, but we didn't find out until they took her to the hospital because she passed out at dinner in the retirement home. She said she hadn't wanted to bother anyone by making a fuss. Finally, she was diagnosed with stomach cancer. It spread through her entire digestive system. After she went into hospice, my mom was cleaning out grandma's apartment and found every single prescription bottle of painkillers mom had picked up at the pharmacy for her, unopened in a drawer. Knowing mom would eventually find them, my grandma had written a note saying she preferred to keep her mind clear. She was seriously tough. Yep, my old man is a lifelong farmer. A couple years back, he was chasing some escaped calves and while climbing over a fence managed to break his ankle, which wouldn't have been so bad if he hadn't kept chasing the calves. Rounding them up, got them into the holding pen, and then asked if I would be kind enough to drive him to the ER. Last year, he also nearly severed the tip of his thumb, was mooring his boat and it pitched unexpectedly and the rope got caught. He just superglued it back together. Farmers are tough. For example, a guy near me wrapped around a PTO during the winter a few years ago. He walked away and didn't go to the doctor the next day. He had breaks in both his legs and broken ribs and a massive concussion. My grandpa, who's an 80-ish-year-old rancher, got bucked off a horse. He stood up and it didn't look good. He limped away and said, "Get me a dip." My grandma handed him his chew can and drove him to the hospital. He ended up having a broken leg, 6 broken ribs, a broken arm, and a broken wrist. He's broken each arm and leg multiple times and broken every rib multiple times. Another farmer I knew got his arm ripped off in a baler when he was reaching in to clear it out. This was before cell phones and he was stuck. When night fell and he wasn't home, his dad went out 3 or 4 hours later. The first thing he said was, "Get me a beer and a cigarette, we're going for a drive." Even though he lost a ton of blood, he lived. Farmers, especially old ones, are so used to pain, I guess, they don't perceive it anymore. I know I'm nowhere near as tough as those guys. Not ER, but actually a cashier at a fast food place. A woman ordered 2 meals, and since she was a little older, really old actually, I offered to bring her food to the table so she wouldn't have to wait. I get there and her husband had wads of paper towels stuck all over his arms with electrical tape, and his right hand and part of his face were a mix of blood and second-degree burns. Turned out he was working on his lawnmower and the engine blew up on him. They stopped for lunch on the way to the hospital for the burns and the metal they couldn't get out. He was acting like it was nothing. My grandfather got his finger caught in the lawnmower engine somehow. Went a couple weeks before finally asking my mom if he should get it looked at. Mom said it was green, so of course she said yes. Ended up having to be partially amputated. Whoops. Working as an EMT, I got called to a 64-year-old female slipped in her house, possible sprained ankle. When we got there, the woman is sitting in a chair with her legs stretched out in front of her, but she had long pants and slippers on that covered the entire ankle, so I couldn't really see. When we walked in, she started talking and didn't really seem to be in any pain at all, so I figured this was going to be an easy trip. I kneeled down in front of her to take a closer look, and I wasn't surprised to find that it wasn't just broken, it was messed right up. I mean, the foot was at a 90-degree angle to the outside, and it was also leaned down, so what should have been the side of her foot was facing straight down, and the bone that should have been holding the ankle in place was pushing against the skin on the inside of her ankle so hard that it was about to rip through. I was bewildered at the fact that at that moment she said, "It doesn't hurt, so I hope it isn't broken." She hardly made a peep on the ride to the hospital. 35 miles, very bumpy. Come to find out she had multiple sclerosis, and that made people feel pain differently. That's amazing how she was so unfazed, but I'm very curious now. How does multiple sclerosis make people feel pain differently? Most neurons are coated in something called a myelin sheath. It helps signals move faster. MS strips the neurons of this myelin sheath, causing the signals to move slower. Therefore, any normal body responses would be delayed by a lot. It's especially bad when it happens in the brain, as they cannot repair themselves. That's pretty much what MS is. It's pretty much the body attacking itself, and that's why it's so difficult to treat. That reminds me of my, at the time, 95-year-old great aunt. She fell one night and cracked her head open on her coffee table. She called my house for my dad, asking if he could stop by when he had a chance. We lived right across the street, so my dad ran over to check on her and walked in to see her covered in blood. He called an ambulance, and apparently she was pissed at him and didn't talk to him for a while because he had made such a big deal about it. She apparently had the EMTs cracking up because of how pissed off she was about the blood getting on her new carpet. I was chatting with my physiotherapist one day about pain tolerance, and she said that she once had a maybe ex-cocaine addict as a patient whose tolerance was absolute zero. She couldn't even touch him without him perceiving it as painful, let alone stretch or manipulate his body. She said he was a very challenging case. That sounds extremely tough for the doctor especially. Was that because of the guy's addiction? Cocaine won't do that, but opiates like heroin can cause this. It's called hyperalgesia. Radiographer here. As a student, I met a patient who was a typical little old lady. She came in with far too many shopping bags and walked extremely slowly. She'd been sent by her GP because she'd fallen getting out of the bath a few weeks previous. So we brought her in and took the first image, AP pelvis if you were wondering, and her pelvis was absolutely ruined. Turns out she had slipped and fallen with one leg in and one leg out of the bath and had taken the whole fall on her vagina. Not wanting to cause a fuss, this woman had ignored the pain and carried on her life as normal for weeks, long enough for the fractures to be fairly healed, albeit in a strange way not really resembling a pelvis much more. Old people don't want to inconvenience others. My grandma would have been the exact same. My grandparents came for a visit when I was a kid, 2-hour drive, and my parents find out that my grandma couldn't walk from the car to the house. It turns out that her legs had become paralyzed from sepsis. She was so angry with my parents for calling an ambulance and making a big deal out of it. When I was studying nursing, I saw a man who had broken his knee in a motorcycle accident 3 days before. The knee was at least 3 times its normal size. The doctor asked him about the pain, and he told him it wasn't that bad. He was mostly annoyed at his family who had taken him to the emergency room. My husband dropped a dirt bike on his leg when he was a teenager. The exhaust landed on him. He has a circle on his leg the size of a baseball from it where no hair grows. When it happened, he tried to hide it. He ended up not being able to walk, and he started to smell from infection before his mom noticed and made him go to the ER. Sometimes people are dumb. He's lucky he didn't lose his foot. I'm an oncology nurse. My patients have some of the highest pain tolerances I've ever seen. They literally have tumors taking over entire cavities in their bodies. Huge masses pressing on places that aren't supposed to be pressed on, and literally eroding through their skin, and they will ask me for pain meds when I have a second. It amazes me. Not a doctor, but my goddaughter was born very prematurely, requiring a major open heart surgery at 2 weeks old. We were told by her docs that since she'd gone through so much surgical trauma the first few weeks of her life, as a neonate, her pain receptors and nerve endings would not develop normally. They gave us the example that if she put her hand on a hot stove as a kid, she would have sustained a severe burn before feeling any pain whatsoever. She never cried as a kid when she got shots, fell down, banged into things, even when it was enough to draw blood. I suspect her medical history was the cause. There's a great documentary out there about kids with a genetic disorder who can't feel pain. It might have been on Discovery or something. The first sign for many are when they chew off their own lips or bite off their own finger. What a crazy disease. I had much the same thing happen when I was a kid. I was born full term, but with a birth defect that required multiple surgeries and left me with severe nerve damage. My parents had to watch me pretty much full time until I was 3 or so, because I'd get injured and wouldn't really know it, or just wouldn't care. 5-year-old child with a severed finger, half hanging off, cool as a cucumber, and not even upset. Mom was in hysterics. I have a similar story involving a 21-year-old female. Severed her index finger in a door and I was the first responder. I controlled the bleeding until we could get her to the hospital, but she took it like a champ. I didn't hear a single peep out of her mouth. My grandma used to be a nurse. She said whenever a kid came in, they'd be hysterical or calm. The parent was always the opposite, like you described. My dad has an unusually high pain tolerance. He was cleaning a fishing pole in our backyard once, and he didn't notice that the pole had splintered and pulled his hand down on it. The force caused the pole to snap in half and drove itself all the way through his hand. He stood up, walked in the kitchen with pole hanging out of his hand, and calmly asked my mom if he should just pull it out or go to the ER. Since it was a fiberglass one, he opted for the ER, just in case something was broken off inside his hand. The list goes on and gets worse. The other was when he fell off a ladder and shattered his leg. The bone came through the skin and he was complaining about going to the ER. My mom used to have a habit of falling off of 6-foot ladders. She would be painting or something during the day when no one's home. If we came home and find her lying on the couch, we knew that she had fallen and cracked her ribs. She had lung surgery twice before and commented that the rib spreader hurt more than broken ribs. She had the highest pain tolerance of anyone I ever knew. That, and she hated sitting still. Sounds almost exactly like my dad. He nailed his hand to a wall during construction with a nail gun, pulled the hand away from the wall, pulled the nail out, and drove himself to the hospital. Also drove himself to the hospital after collapsing from his first heart attack. Not a very smart guy. ER doctor here. I can't count on two hands the number of patients I've seen that are covered in tattoos and are scared of needles or IVs. I mean, complete phobia. It makes absolutely no sense. If anyone can enlighten me as to how this phenomenon can exist, I'd appreciate it. Edit? Thanks, guys. Seems like it's the appearance, depth, and the associated pain when things don't go correctly that create the aversion. To quote a friend of a friend when asked by an ER doctor who queried why he was freaking out over getting a tetanus shot after having a cut sewn up without anesthetic, that's why it's called an irrational fear of needles. I can only speak from personal experience. With tattoos, the needles are penetrating into the dermis. IVs and shots are going into the vein and muscle respectively. For me, it's the thought that the shots are much deeper. ER doctor here. My intern year in residency, I saw a 17-year-old kid who, while playing hockey, tried to stop a puck with a gloved hand. It struck his fingertip, injuring the base of his nail, causing a significant deformity. His nail bed needed repair, which requires first removing the nail. That's done by bluntly dissecting or separating the nail from the tissue below it. If your stomach didn't turn reading that and imagining it, congratulations, you have no soul. Typically, we use a numbing agent to eliminate sensation to the entire finger using something called a digital block. I put it in. After 10 minutes, he still felt me touching his fingertip. I tried putting some around the nail. He still felt everything. His mother said his father actually had a similar thing. Lidocaine didn't work on him. I offered him a different numbing medicine. We can inject Benadryl in that case, or even knocking him out. He looked at me in the eyes and said, "Doc, just take it off." Without anything? Yeah, it's fine. They fix our cuts without numbing medicine. But it's gonna hurt a lot. I have to scrape, I know. So I went at it. He grabbed a towel with his other hand and I went to work. 45 minutes later, the nail was off, he was repaired, and I replaced the nail in its rightful place. The kid didn't even make a noise. Hockey players are tough. I have the same issue. The lidocaine family of anesthetics does nothing to numb pain for me. Neither do any of the others I've had used on me. This makes procedures like that nail thing a bit pesky. Dentistry also falls into the same category. The worst thing I went through was my vasectomy. The doctor did his usual injection of anesthetic and I did my usual, yep, it's numb response, since they won't do anything without jabbing you with needles. Nothing was numb, but we went through with it anyway, just like every other time I had to have something done. It was worse than getting stitched up, but not as bad as a root canal. I've had a dislocated shoulder reduced, a separated shoulder reduced, broken ribs realigned, several lacerations stitched up, a thumbnail repair, and other stuff done without being numbed up. I usually do the towel trick like the kid. What's the juiciest rumor at your school that turned out to be 100% true? New kid comes to high school. He has a funny accent because his parents were missionaries traveling all over the world. He was actually kind of cool. Spoke at least 4 different languages, English, Spanish, Russian, and Mandarin. He was super polite and everyone liked him. Of course, he had haters, mainly the so-called bullies, a concept he never understood. Rumors started that he was well-versed in many forms of martial arts. He never denied or admitted to them. One of the bullies decided to find out. He was much bigger than the new kid, and new kid did everything in his power to not escalate the fight. Even took a punch from said bully. Well, guess the rumor was true. Not only did the new kid beat him up, but the bully pooped himself. Most awesome thing I ever saw in high school. Edit. Unfortunately, I was never really close to him, but I had heard from another friend of mine that he ended up moving after high school. Nobody seems to know anything else. I barely remember his first name. It was not an easy one, let alone his last name. So he will live on in memory as that one foreign kid that nobody messed with. Not only did the kid beat him up, but the bully pooped himself. Thank you. This has made it onto my list of favorite things to look at when I'm old. Resource officer was a predator and then murdered his wife after he was fired. He fled and they still haven't found him over 10 years later. He's on Marshall's top 15 most wanted list. His name was Dan Heers and his mother thinks he's dead. The computer tech teacher got caught having relations with a student. He was put on suspension while the investigation was conducted, and he killed himself by running his car into a tree. The science teacher was a predator. Some kid found Viagra in his desk, and he was put in admin leave when they found a used condom in his trash after the search. Then kids came forward. Was not pretty. Science teacher at my boarding school was also a predator. He was caught when he was projecting his computer screen in class and inappropriate material popped up. He was obviously fired, but his wife and adopted son stayed. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for them. I'm 90% sure my former science teacher was also a bit of a predator too. He would get uncomfortably close to girls and try and look down their tops. It was only after I left that school that I heard he got expelled for inappropriate behavior. Later, I heard he had moved to some Asian country to teach there. Who knows what he's up to over there? 2 teachers that were married to each other were sleeping with students. The husband was the first to do it, and the wife found out and slept with some of her students as revenge. Also, the resource officer was sleeping with some of the 18-year-old seniors. All got confirmed when they were fired for it. Well, the teachers got fired. The officer got moved to bicycle patrol. My school had a similar incident. Wife was fired for sleeping with a student. They got divorced, and then the husband was fired a few years later for the same thing. The students were 18, so no one went to jail. Ah, yes. Find out your husband's cheating on you? Don't divorce him. Nah. Start cheating too, with people that will get you fired and possibly jailed. This one girl would make those colorful friendship bracelets made out of needlepoint floss for every guy she gave a BJ to. There were lots of bracelets. Is that so she keeps track of repeats? Rumor had it that a teacher was sleeping with some of his students that wanted to get higher grades. No one believed it to be true because he was married and just had his 3rd baby. 100% true, and all the students were proud of it. He's still in jail 5 years later. This is one thing I've never understood about the American education system. Why do you have your teachers set your exams and give you your grades? Surely it defeats the point of having an examination in the first place and risks students/teachers blackmailing each other as seen here. That there's an underground bunker from the Cold War era below the school. Not only is it there, but it turns out you can access it from the PE changing room through a secret trap door. Edit, it's in Krakow, Poland because so many of you were curious. But looks like there's actually lots of schools that have one. Edit 2. Also, it is confirmed to be a bunker, but it was built before the school existed and was most likely emptied by previous owners of the building. My school had one of those as well. The hatch was hidden in the cafeteria kitchen. Its existence was confirmed when our recent American history teacher went down and took pictures for our Cold War unit. He said that most of the tunnel had been filled in with concrete, but there was still substantial walking area. My school had one of these. Though it wasn't hidden under a trap door, there was a door to it in the theater. The door led down to the pit under the stage, and the back of that led to the area that could serve as a bunker. The bunker actually led to a system of tunnels that then connected it to the middle school that was about 3/4 of a mile away. Reminds me of my high school. It used to have a coal-burning boiler, and there was a massive coal room that extended out underneath the marching band's practice fields. Some stoners I knew would sneak in there to get high, and they bumped into the art teacher in there. The art teacher had the same idea. Why is it always the art teachers? In middle school, a rumor floated around pretty much most of the school that the principal had a consistent record of sexual assault. And what do you know, he got arrested for sexual assault when I was a freshman in high school. It was all over the news and everything. The government/politics teacher at my school quietly retired because it was sort of an open secret that the girls could get a better grade in his class by wearing low-cut shirts. I don't know if he ever did anything though. A younger male teacher, upper 20s, newlywed, was having sex in his classroom during lunch with an older female teacher, married in her mid-40s. A student caught them and filmed it and pretty much blackmailed them into turning themselves in. Well, at least he was sleeping with a teacher and not a student. Well, that's a plot twist I could get behind. A student used blackmail to get the offenders to do the right thing for once. At one of the schools in my country, someone caught the principal and some other teacher having sex. They dragged him all over social media and they ended up ruining his life. The guy killed himself. We had a Spanish teacher who would keep giving random financial/business advice during classes. One day, he tabbed over to his stock trading homepage and accidentally revealed that he was a millionaire. Rumors about his past started circulating. Around graduation, some students found old newspaper articles confirming that he was a former meth dealer who had spent time in jail. Was a seriously cool guy, actually. That would be a good Breaking Bad spinoff. We had a physics teacher who was rumored to be a millionaire as well. It was said that he had a hand in the development of MRI machines in his younger years. I know he himself had stories about working in the lab of an MRI factory, so I'm pretty sure it checks out, even if he never said how much money he had. Either way, the rumors were that he had enough to retire anytime he wanted, so it was probably a lot. How the heck did a former meth dealer get teacher certification? I don't know if I buy this one. If he hadn't been caught, it would make sense, and maybe he gets a job if he has a drug possession prior. But having distribution on your record and then getting a post-prison teaching gig doesn't add up. 2 sports teachers were having an affair with each other, even though one of their spouses was already a sports teacher in the same school using the same dinky office. Rumor was confirmed when the 2 dudes had a fist fight in the basketball court. I feel like every PE teacher I ever had was plowing another member of staff. Edit. I should mention I was homeschooled. That the school district security guard would let you get away with anything if you gave him some coke. He later got caught and fired for it. If anyone else went there, it was at Desert View High School in Tuscan. Edit, I was talking about cocaine, not the soda, for those who didn't realize that. And on a serious note, it's all about the Dr. Pepper. The wood tech teacher was married to the French teacher and they had a child. The PE teacher slept with the French teacher, and the wood tech teacher went into the PE department and threatened to beat the crap out of the PE teacher with a cricket bat. I believe this was during a normal school day, but it was before my year started there. A second PE teacher got involved and stopped it, so everyone kept their jobs. Later on, the wood tech teacher married the geography teacher and they had 2 kids, whilst a third PE teacher cheated on her husband with the second PE teacher, and every Wednesday, an hour before lunch, I would see PE teachers 2 and 3 through the window of my science classroom. They would get in a car and leave together. Sometimes I would see them come back, and sometimes I wouldn't. I jokingly pointed it out to people before anyone else caught on, and later they became a couple that was known to students. Final count, 6 teachers, 3 pregnancies, 2 affairs, and 1 angry husband with a cricket bat. Teacher from my high school. Girls were creeped out by him and constantly reported him for making them uncomfortable. He was quite obese, belly hung to his knees, so the school and other students wrongly assumed these girls were being rude. 6 years later, he's in jail for getting caught with inappropriate material on his computer, alongside upskirt photos of girls from my school. My science teacher got caught with inappropriate material on his computer too. Genuinely though, predator teachers are probably more common than we think. Oh god, this is why people need to believe teenagers when they report any sort of sexual misconduct. Something similar happened at my high school in South Texas. Pretty much the same story, but the teacher was an older man. I never had him, but some friends of mine always said he made them feel uncomfortable. Was outed as a predator a few years later when they found inappropriate material on his computer. That there was a girl in the boys' bathroom giving BJs for $10. There really was, and she got expelled. $10? That's way too cheap considering the risk. Girl in my class did this only for free. Came back to class after lunch bragging about how there was a literal line of guys and she'd blown 12. A girl blew the whole basketball team after a game. Don't know the exact details, I just know the girl left and 3 kids got expelled. I'm not naming the high school for privacy reasons. The reason they got expelled was because it was a Catholic school and they did it in the locker room. My 6th grade math teacher was super creepy. He would assign seats randomly, but always place the girls in the front of the classroom. Did the whole lingering stare thing and was always trying to get people to hang out with him during lunch. I never did, but he was married and has a baby, so no one really suspected anything of him other than being creepy. Fast forward about 7 years, the teacher ended up being a predator. He had an ongoing relationship with a girl that began when she was 13. Based on what I could see from the various news articles, she was either in my year or the year before me. The police came to arrest him in the middle of his class, cuffed him in front of his students, and then had to walk him throughout campus in cuffs to get to their car. I don't feel bad for him at all, but I can't imagine how his wife and son must feel. The same exact thing happened at my school, except he was an art teacher. What is wrong with the world? Probably not the juiciest thing, but the one I remember because of how I found out. A few of our high school library walls were weird, sort of a lowercase b shape. So there was this empty space behind the bookshelves up against the walls. Tunnels, basically. Word was students were messing around in there. I worked in the library, had to move the shelves, clean the tunnels, found used condoms. It was an all-boys school at the time, if that matters. Mind, the condoms weren't the worst thing really. The leftover food debris in there was worse. Stuff like chicken bones. Edit. A couple years later, I was talking with an ex-schoolmate. Another guy from our graduating class comes in. I hate that guy, my friend says. He's gay. Dude, you're gay. There's gay, and then there's so gay other gay people think you're too gay. Turns out that gent had been one of the entrepreneurial fellows selling services for a few dollars ago. I wasn't shocked since I already had some idea, but I was surprised that the going rate had been so cheap. You know you've hit rock bottom when you'll give a blowy for a piece of fried chicken. Either that or that's some awfully good chicken. There was a rumor that our female English teacher was sleeping with the starting QB and that her youngest child was not her husband's but the QB's. She was caught sleeping with a different one of her students years later, and it is now known that she has slept with a number of former students, including the QB. Now people really think her youngest kid isn't her husband's. When I was in middle school, the big joke rumor was that 2 teachers were banging. Years later, everyone finds out that not only were they having an affair outside of their respective marriages, but that the male teacher was cheating on both women with a man. The female teacher moved away and ended her own life. The entire situation was unbelievably messy. I'm always amazed at people who have the energy and time to cheat. Like, how did he stay organized enough to fit in a wife, a mistress, and a gay lover while working full-time? It just sounds exhausting. The physics teacher was sexting and sleeping with one of his students. Not sure if she was 18 or not at the time. Although, honestly, no one was surprised. He was a little too friendly toward the girls and changed his pants in the back of the classroom once. He ended up leaving for personal reasons over Thanksgiving break, but of course it got out. Sadly, his wife was in her 3rd trimester, which probably didn't make it any easier for her to find out her husband was sleeping with a high school student. I feel a disproportionate number of the predator teacher stories involve a pregnant wife or just born child. That within the first 2 weeks of school starting and everyone meeting each other, one of the girls had a threesome with 2 guys who didn't really get along. So she convinced them to make love, not war. We had a study hall teacher who was a huge hard ass with a handlebar mustache who was retired Navy. Turned out he was a hardcore gay/BDSM porn star in the early 2000s. He got fired even though it was long before his time teaching. I ended up writing a letter to the administration, county, and their attorneys, but he stayed fired. I guess it would be hard to command respect from students when Googling his porn name immediately brought up a pic of his balls bound in leather. Our math teacher in high school had a student teacher she was helping train to take over for her when she went on maternity leave. The student teacher was maybe 20 or 21 and a fairly attractive young woman, so naturally all the guys in the class had a crush on her. One guy in particular was a super senior, around 18 to 19. He flirted with her non-stop and she would act super embarrassed and blush and in a non-committal way tell him to knock it off. I'm sure you see where this is going. Well, towards the end of the semester, he bragged about going out on a date with her and how they went to the movies, then he went back to her place and they had sex. We all thought he was full of it, but the rumor got around the school and of course the teachers and faculty found out. Then one day, she's just gone, and we had substitute teachers for the rest of the semester. We all knew what happened. Looking back, it's kind of a shame that she probably wrecked her future teaching career because of him. Yeah, teachers shouldn't start that young with people they were allowed to bang a few weeks ago. A girl got caught giving her boyfriend a blowjob in one of the stairwells of my school. The government teacher, one of the most ultra-religious and pure-hearted individuals on earth, was the one who caught them. Ended up in a science class with the girl. She did not care at all that she got caught and took her legend status like a champ. Still makes me laugh over a decade later. Similar thing happened at my school, but the guy got put on the predators list even though they were both 14 and the girl initiated it. She wasn't punished. Georgia schools suck. There was this couple I knew in high school who did stuff like this. Our school was small and we just had tables, mesh tables, important, out on a black top that served as an all-purpose courtyard and lunch area. Since the girl wore skirts, they would often mess around under the table during lunch. Teacher walked by and somehow didn't notice. She even blew him a few times in full view of everyone, thinking she was being slick. Also, there was this time I had to deliver something to the chem room and this girl, different girl, was giving a hand job to 2 guys at once during class. Their seat was in the back, but in line of sight of the teacher's desk. Don't know how they never got caught. Very attractive, married with kids PE teacher was screwing very attractive, married with kid English teacher. We all thought they were just very flirty people, but nope, full-on affair going on. I call bull. I've never seen a remotely attractive PE teacher. The music teacher in my high school was rumored to have been fired for sending explicit photos to a female student. There had been subs taking his place for nearly a month. The principal said he was too ill to come into work, and eventually another rumor that he had cancer started spreading around. He had been bald longer than anyone could remember. If you asked any of the school's staff what was going on, they would just say, "He's just sick right now, we don't know when he'll be returning." One day in my physics class, everyone in the class pestered the teacher for the whole period until he finally gave in. Some people were still trying to argue the cancer story. One student asked the physics teacher, "Did he send photos to that girl?" And he finally said, "The thing that you think happened, it happened." The student said, "So he did?" And the teacher simply nodded his head yes. A month or so later, the music teacher showed up in school. Everyone was running up to him in the hallway asking what happened. He dodged every question, and the last thing I heard him say was, "I'm just here to get some things." He didn't teach his class that day, and I never saw him again. What's the juiciest rumor at your school that turned out to be 100% true? New kid comes to high school. He has a funny accent because his parents were missionaries traveling all over the world. He was actually kind of cool. Spoke at least 4 different languages: English, Spanish, Russian, and Mandarin. He was super polite and everyone liked him. Of course, he had haters, mainly the so-called bullies, a concept he never understood. Rumors started that he was well-versed in many forms of martial arts. He never denied or admitted to them. One of the bullies decided to find out. He was much bigger than the new kid, and new kid did everything in his power to not escalate the fight. Even took a punch from said bully. Well, guess the rumor was true. Not only did the new kid beat him up, but the bully pooped himself. Most awesome thing I ever saw in high school. Edit. Unfortunately, I was never really close to him, but I had heard from another friend of mine that he ended up moving after high school. Nobody seems to know anything else. I barely remember his first name. It was not an easy one, let alone his last name. So he will live on in memory as that one foreign kid that nobody messed with. Not only did the kid beat him up, but the bully pooped himself. Thank you. This has made it onto my list of favorite things to look at when I'm old. Resource officer was a child molester and then murdered his wife after he was fired. He fled and they still haven't found him over 10 years later. He's on Marshall's top 15 most wanted list. His name was Dan Heers and his mother thinks he's dead. The computer tech teacher got caught having sex with a student. He was put on suspension while the investigation was conducted, and he killed himself by running his car into a tree. The science teacher was a pedophile. Some kid found Viagra in his desk, and he was put in admin leave when they found a used condom in his trash after the search. Then kids came forward. Was not pretty. Science teacher at my boarding school was also a pedophile. He was caught when he was projecting his computer screen in class and child porn popped up. He was obviously fired, but his wife and adopted son stayed. I can't imagine how hard that must have been for them. I'm 90% sure my former science teacher was also a bit of a pedophile too. He would get uncomfortably close to girls and try and look down their tops. It was only after I left that school that I heard he got expelled for inappropriate behavior. Later I heard he had moved to some Asian country to teach there. Who knows what he's up to over there? 2 teachers that were married to each other were sleeping with students. The husband was the first to do it and the wife found out and slept with some of her students as revenge. Also, the resource officer was sleeping with some of the 18-year-old seniors. All got confirmed when they were fired for it. Well, the teachers got fired. The officer got moved to bicycle patrol. My school had a similar incident. Wife was fired for sleeping with a student. They got divorced and then the husband was fired a few years later for the same thing. The students were 18, so no one went to jail. Ah, yes. Find out your husband's cheating on you? Don't divorce him. Nah. Start cheating too, with people that will get you fired and possibly jailed. This one girl would make those colorful friendship bracelets made out of needlepoint floss for every guy she gave a BJ to. There were lots of bracelets. Is that so she keeps track of repeats? Rumor had it that a teacher was having sex with some of his students that wanted higher grades. No one believed it to be true because he was married and just had his 3rd baby. 100% true, and all the students were proud of it. He's still in jail 5 years later. This is one thing I've never understood about the American education system. Why do you have your teachers set your exams and give you your grades? Surely it defeats the point of having an examination in the first place and risks students/teachers blackmailing each other as seen here. An abortion using a coat hanger where a student bled to death. It happened years before I attended the school and was the basis of the ghost sightings near the bathroom. Man, this is disturbing as hell. That there's an underground bunker from the Cold War era below the school. Not only is it there, but it turns out you can access it from the PE changing room through a secret trap door. Edit, it's in Krakow, Poland because so many of you were curious. But looks like there's actually lots of schools that have one. Edit 2. Also, it is confirmed to be a bunker, but it was built before the school existed and was most likely emptied by previous owners of the building. My school had one of those as well. The hatch was hidden in the cafeteria kitchen. Its existence was confirmed when our recent American history teacher went down and took pictures for our Cold War unit. He said that most of the tunnel had been filled in with concrete, but there was still substantial walking area. My school had one of these. Though it wasn't hidden under a trap door, there was a door to it in the theater. The door led down to the pit under the stage, and the back of that led to the area that could serve as a bunker. The bunker actually led to a system of tunnels that then connected it to the middle school that was about 3/4 of a mile away. Reminds me of my high school. It used to have a coal-burning boiler, and there was a massive coal room that extended out underneath the marching band's practice fields. Some stoners I knew would sneak in there to get high, and they bumped into the art teacher in there. The art teacher had the same idea. Why is it always the art teachers? In middle school, a rumor floated around pretty much most of the school that the principal had a consistent record of sexual assault. And what do you know, he got arrested for sexual assault when I was a freshman in high school. It was all over the news and everything. The government/politics teacher at my school quietly retired because it was sort of an open secret that the girls could get a better grade in his class by wearing low-cut shirts. I don't know if he ever did anything though. A younger male teacher, upper 20s, newlywed, was having sex in his classroom during lunch with an older female teacher, married in her mid-40s. A student caught them and filmed it and pretty much blackmailed them into turning themselves in. Well, at least he was sleeping with a teacher and not a student. Well, that's a plot twist I could get behind. A student used blackmail to get the offenders to do the right thing for once. At one of the schools in my country, someone caught the principal and some other teacher having sex. They dragged him all over social media and they ended up ruining his life. The guy killed himself. We had a Spanish teacher who would keep giving random financial/business advice during classes. One day, he tabbed over to his stock trading homepage and accidentally revealed that he was a millionaire. Rumors about his past started circulating. Around graduation, some students found old newspaper articles confirming that he was a former meth dealer who had spent time in jail. Was a seriously cool guy, actually. That would be a good Breaking Bad spinoff. We had a physics teacher who was rumored to be a millionaire as well. It was said that he had a hand in the development of MRI machines in his younger years. I know he himself had stories about working in the lab of an MRI factory, so I'm pretty sure it checks out, even if he never said how much money he had. Either way, the rumors were that he had enough to retire anytime he wanted, so it was probably a lot. How the heck did a former meth dealer get teacher certification? I don't know if I buy this one. If he hadn't been caught, it would make sense, and maybe he gets a job if he has a drug possession prior, but having distribution on your record and then getting a post-prison teaching gig doesn't add up. Two sports teachers were having an affair with each other, even though one of their spouses was already a sports teacher in the same school using the same dinky office. Rumor was confirmed when the two dudes had a fist fight in the basketball court. I feel like every PE teacher I ever had was plowing another member of staff. Edit, I should mention I was homeschooled. That the school district security guard would let you get away with anything if you gave him some coke. He later got caught and fired for it. If anyone else went there, it was at Desert View High School in Tuscan. Edit, I was talking about cocaine, not the soda, for those who didn't realize that. And on a serious note, it's all about the Dr. Pepper. The wood tech teacher was married to the French teacher and they had a child. The PE teacher slept with the French teacher, and the wood tech teacher went into the PE department and threatened to beat the crap out of the PE teacher with a cricket bat. I believe this was during a normal school day, but it was before my year started there. A second PE teacher got involved and stopped it, so everyone kept their jobs. Later on, the wood tech teacher married the geography teacher and they had 2 kids, whilst a third PE teacher cheated on her husband with the second PE teacher, and every Wednesday, an hour before lunch, I would see PE teachers 2 and 3 through the window of my science classroom. They would get in a car and leave together. Sometimes I would see them come back, and sometimes I wouldn't. I jokingly pointed it out to people before anyone else caught on, and later they became a couple that was known to students. Final count? 6 teachers, 3 pregnancies, 2 affairs, and 1 angry husband with a cricket bat. Teacher from my high school. Girls were creeped out by him and constantly reported him for making them uncomfortable. He was quite obese, belly hung to his knees, so the school and other students wrongly assumed these girls were being rude. 6 years later, he's in prison after being caught with child porn on his computer, alongside upskirt photos of girls from my school. My science teacher got caught with child porn on his computer too. Genuinely though, pedophile teachers are probably more common than we think. Oh god, this is why people need to believe teenagers when they report any sort of sexual misconduct. Something similar happened at my high school in South Texas. Pretty much the same story, but the teacher was an older man. I never had him, but some friends of mine always said he made them feel uncomfortable. Was outed as a pedophile a few years later after finding child porn on his personal computer. That there was a girl in the boys' bathroom giving BJs for $10. There really was, and she got expelled. $10? That's way too cheap considering the risk. Girl in my class did this only for free. Came back to class after lunch bragging about how there was a literal line of guys and she'd blown 12. A girl blew the whole basketball team after a game. Don't know the exact details, I just know the girl left and 3 kids got expelled. I'm not naming the high school for privacy reasons. The reason they got expelled was because it was a Catholic school and they did it in the locker room. My 6th grade math teacher was super creepy. He would assign seats randomly, but always place the girls in the front of the classroom. Did the whole lingering stare thing and was always trying to get people to hang out with him during lunch. I never did, but he was married and has a baby, so no one really suspected anything of him other than being creepy. Fast forward about 7 years, the teacher ended up being a sex offender. He had an ongoing relationship with a girl that began when she was 13. Based on what I could see from the various news articles, she was either in my year or the year before me. The police came to arrest him in the middle of his class, cuffed him in front of his students, and then had to walk him throughout campus in cuffs to get to their car. I don't feel bad for him at all, but I can't imagine how his wife and son must feel. The same exact thing happened at my school, except he was an art teacher. What is wrong with the world? Probably not the juiciest thing, but the one I remember because of how I found out. A few of our high school library walls were weird, sort of a lowercase b shape. So there was this empty space behind the bookshelves up against the walls. Tunnels, basically. Word was students were messing around in there. I worked in the library, had to move the shelves, clean the tunnels, found used condoms. It was an all-boys school at the time, if that matters. Mind, the condoms weren't the worst thing really. The leftover food debris in there was worse. Stuff like chicken bones. Edit. A couple years later, I was talking with an ex-schoolmate. Another guy from our graduating class comes in. I hate that guy, my friend says. He's gay. Dude, you're gay. There's gay, and then there's so gay other gay people think you're too gay. Turns out that gent had been one of the entrepreneurial fellows selling services for a few dollars ago. I wasn't shocked since I already had some idea, but I was surprised that the going rate had been so cheap. You know you've hit rock bottom when you'll give a blowy for a piece of fried chicken. Either that or that's some awfully good chicken. There was a rumor that our female English teacher was sleeping with the starting QB and that her youngest child was not her husband's but the QB's. She was caught sleeping with a different one of her students years later, and it is now known that she has slept with a number of former students, including the QB. Now people really think her youngest kid isn't her husband's. When I was in middle school, the big joke rumor was that 2 teachers were banging. Years later, everyone finds out that not only were they having an affair outside of their respective marriages, but that the male teacher was cheating on both women with a man. The female teacher moved away and ended her own life. The entire situation was unbelievably messy. I'm always amazed at people who have the energy and time to cheat. Like, how did he stay organized enough to fit in a wife, a mistress, and a gay lover while working full-time? It just sounds exhausting. The physics teacher was sexting and sleeping with one of his students. Not sure if she was 18 or not at the time. Although, honestly, no one was surprised. He was a little too friendly toward the girls and changed his pants in the back of the classroom once. He ended up leaving for personal reasons over Thanksgiving break, but of course it got out. Sadly, his wife was in her 3rd trimester, which probably didn't make it any easier for her to find out her husband was sleeping with a high school student. I feel as if a disproportionate number of the sex-offending teacher stories involve a pregnant wife or just born child. That within the first 2 weeks of school starting and everyone meeting each other, one of the girls had a threesome with 2 guys who didn't really get along. So she convinced them to make love, not war. We had a study hall teacher who was a huge hard-ass with a handlebar mustache who was retired Navy. Turned out he was a hardcore gay/BDSM porn star in the early 2000s. He got fired even though it was long before his time teaching. I ended up writing a letter to the administration, county, and their attorneys, but he stayed fired. I guess it would be hard to command respect from students when Googling his porn name immediately brought up a pic of his balls bound in leather. Our math teacher in high school had a student teacher she was helping train to take over for her when she went on maternity leave. The student teacher was maybe 20 or 21 and a fairly attractive young woman, so naturally all the guys in the class had a crush on her. One guy in particular was a super senior, around 18 to 19. He flirted with her non-stop and she would act super embarrassed and blush and in a non-committal way tell him to knock it off. I'm sure you see where this is going. Well, towards the end of the semester, he bragged about going out on a date with her and how they went to the movies, then he went back to her place and they had sex. We all thought he was full of it, But the rumor got around the school, and of course the teachers and faculty found out. Then one day, she's just gone, and we had substitute teachers for the rest of the semester. We all knew what happened. Looking back, it's kind of a shame that she probably wrecked her future teaching career because of him. Yeah, teachers shouldn't start that young with people they were allowed to bang a few weeks ago. A girl got caught giving her boyfriend a blowjob in one of the stairwells of my school. The government teacher, one of the most ultra-religious and pure-hearted individuals on earth, was the one who caught them. Ended up in a science class with the girl. She did not care at all that she got caught and took her legend status like a champ. Still makes me laugh over a decade later. Similar thing happened at my school, but the guy got put on the sex offenders list even though they were both 14 and the girl initiated it. She wasn't punished. Georgia schools suck. There was this couple I knew in high school who did stuff like this. Our school was small and we just had tables, mesh tables, important, out on a black top that served as an all-purpose courtyard and lunch area. Since the girl wore skirts, he would often finger her under the table during lunch. Teacher walked by and somehow didn't notice. She even blew him a few times in full view of everyone, thinking she was being slick. Also, there was this time I had to deliver something to the chem room and this girl, different girl, was giving a hand job to 2 guys at once during class. Their seat was in the back, but in line of sight of the teacher's desk. Don't know how they never got caught. Very attractive, married with kids PE teacher was screwing very attractive, married with kid English teacher. We all thought they were just very flirty people, but nope, full-on affair going on. I call bull. I've never seen a remotely attractive PE teacher. The music teacher in my high school was rumored to have been fired for sending explicit photos to a female student. There had been subs taking his place for nearly a month. The principal said he was too ill to come into work, and eventually another rumor that he had cancer started spreading around. He had been bald longer than anyone could remember. If you asked any of the school's staff what was going on, they would just say, "He's just sick right now, we don't know when he'll be returning." One day in my physics class, everyone in the class pestered the teacher for the whole period until he finally gave in. Some people were still trying to argue the cancer story. One student asked the physics teacher, "Did he send nudes to that girl?" And he finally said, "The thing that you think happened, it happened." The student said, "So he did?" And the teacher simply nodded his head yes. A month or so later, the music teacher showed up in school. Everyone was running up to him in the hallway asking what happened. He dodged every question, and the last thing I heard him say was, "I'm just here to get some things." He didn't teach his class that day, and I never saw him again. What's one rule that your school/workplace has implemented that absolutely backfired? My high school banned girls from wearing any shirt that exposed their bra straps, because seeing a bra strap would give high school boys evil thoughts. Most of the girls in the school responded by wearing the same shirts they'd always worn, without bras. As a teenage boy, it was a happy couple of weeks. The school tried to then mandate that all female students wear bras, until a male teacher asked a 15-year-old if she was wearing appropriate undergarments or not. She called him a pervert. Her parents, who thought the whole dress code thing was as stupid as most of the students, threatened to sexual assault harassment against the school. Everybody in charge panicked, and it all went back to the way it was before they tried to change anything. Would give high school boys evil thoughts? I wish school administrators would give up this stupid reasoning already. They can easily just cite professionalism as their reason to force kids to dress a certain standard and not be in the wrong. Like if boys want to walk around with their pants sagging and their underwear hanging out, tell them to fix their clothing because they look like slobs. No good reason to treat the girls any differently. During our general meeting last week, the owner of the company went on a bit of a rant about negative reviews of management on a popular jobs website with a green logo. He demanded that we stop posting negative reviews immediately and shamed anyone in the room who had done so. As you can guess, people doubled down and posted their grievances on the same day as the meeting. The green logo company doesn't take too kindly to that sort of behavior. Seriously, they will terminate service if management is caught doing that. Report it. At my old company, different coworkers eventually fessed up to which reviews were theirs. Almost all the negative reviews were true, and the company now hardly exists anymore. Go figure. Because of rumors of a drug problem in the school, the administration decided to drug test students. The media jumped all over that, violation of our civil rights or something. The initial statement was that anyone who failed the test would be kicked out of school. After the 40th or so kid failed, they changed the policy to mandatory meetings with the counselor. After the 100th kid failed, they hired another counselor. Our school just brought in drug-sniffing dogs that would randomly come into classroom. The thing was, the sheriff's department would always be parked in front of the school before the first bell with clearly marked canine cars. So anybody who had drugs would see the cars and just skip school that day. Absences increased massively. If you signed up for any extracurricular activity, including sports, clubs, band, etc., you were also signing yourself up for the possibility to be randomly tested. I got tested once, and it was right after I got foot surgery. So of course I tested positive for painkillers. The school nurse even had them locked up in her office if I needed them. The school admins threw a huge deal about it to my mom, and needless to say, she was not very impressed. My old boss tried implementing an incentive scheme for the underperformers, while anyone who consistently did well received nothing. 3 of us quit within a month. I worked somewhere that had an incentive program for top-earning departments. They announced in advance that they were discontinuing it. Everyone, while not thrilled, was okay with it because it was only a small sect of employees who were eligible, and they kind of knew it was bull because no one else in the organization was eligible. Come to the month it was supposed to go away, they accidentally issued every employee another bonus. They weren't giant bonuses, 300 to 500. They immediately announced they were going to pull them back over the course of the next 3 paychecks, taking 30, 30, and 40% of the bonuses back each check. Our entire department quit. Just walked. What's funny is that in a similar result to your situation, the departments across the company who were underperforming, they didn't get the bonus, so none of them quit. They lost their best performers over what equated to about a $2,000 per location bonus. My high school did something like this. They hand out these tickets to teachers to give to students to incentivize them to behave better. Well, most teachers gave them out to students who normally behave badly if they were having an uncharacteristically good day. Meanwhile, students who always behaved well got nothing. It didn't really backfire for them because the well-behaved students didn't care enough to rock the boat. I did get a couple because I had one teacher who would wait until the end of the year and give them out to the students with the best grade in his class. Trouble was, by then the candy bars were gone and there weren't t-shirts left in my size. All that was left was office supplies, Mardi Gras beads, and t-shirts either too large or too small. We used to be allowed to stream music and such on our computers. Spotify was an approved program and would come installed on your computer. Someone complained about productivity despite us always doing our work, and so they banned streaming of any kind on our computers. But now everyone just listens on their phone, so you walk around the office and nearly everyone has their phone out now, so it looks even worse when sponsors come into the office. Yo, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube are easily my best work friends. Banging out emails all day without listening to music would be borderline unbearable. Strange that they'd make a stink about Spotify causing productivity, but I have seen some offices ban music streaming because their office internet bandwidth slows to a crawl when everyone is running Spotify on their computers. Work instituted a point system for being late or calling off sick. Accrue too many points and you get written up, fired if it continues. They doled out the same number of points whether someone was a minute late or called off altogether. And if an absent lasted up to 5 days, it was still only 1 absence. So anyone who overslept or encountered heavy traffic and was running late would just stay home for the rest of the week. After several months, they decided that being late was only worth half a point. I used to manage a casino that had the exact same type of thing. The way it was abused is if someone was running late, they would call to say they were en route and could you please not give them a demerit. If you refused and said that they would get one, they'd just say, okay, I'm canceling my shift then. Same demerit, so why not take a Friday night off? Upper management never figured out how the system was stupid and refused to remove it, so we just stopped handing them out. Side note, it is better to reward good behavior with incentives rather than punishments for bad. 1 month, no late, no cancel, free meal. 2 months, half a day off with pay. Compare this to lost time for lates and no-shows, and so on. I worked at a place with that system. I missed 14 days total in increments of 3, but only got docked 3 points. In my defense, it turned out I was allergic to the product we made there, a type of plastic, the one they used to make chairs. And that's why I ended up missing work so much. That's the one workplace I wish I could have made work out because I adored the job, my coworkers, and my boss, but the job itself didn't like me. Back when I worked at Disneyland, they had a system like this, and I believe most, if not all, departments followed it. If you called in sick, you received 3 points. You could call in sick for up to 4 consecutive shifts on the same 3 points. On the 5th shift, you were put out on a leave of absence and required a note to return. If you were late, you received 1.5 points. Depending on your status or seniority, you were written up based on the number of points you accrued in a selected amount of time. For example, 9 points in 3 months, 12 points in 6 months, 24 points in a year, etc. The points would fall off 1 year from the date you initially received them. Here's the kicker. They also have a call-in option called dependent. A dependent call was 0 points for up to 3 consecutive shifts. When that was first instituted, it was meant for for people who have dependents that they need to care for at home, namely children or elderly parents. At the time, you had to qualify for it by having these dependents listed on your tax forms with HR. If you didn't, you got 3 points. Later, Disneyland was forced to open the option to all cast members, but revised the policy to limit all dependent calls to single shifts, no more consecutive shifts, and cap them at 4 a year. They were use them or lose them, and they'd reset on January 1st. Furthermore, the CM would have to say who they were caring for, kid or mom. Do you know how often people called in dependent on January 1st? Most of the time when they left their voicemail, we could still hear the party going on in the background. It wasn't unusual to have massive staffing issues on January 1st because people who were not scheduled to work didn't want to come in because they had already received the day off or wouldn't answer the phone. And these kids were calling in to care for their grandmothers. Seriously. I don't know if Disneyland still uses that point system, but in theory, you could miss about 25% of the year if you watched your points carefully, balanced your sick and dependent calls, and were never late when you did show up. In our office, we were not allowed to have more than 14 consecutive days off. So one guy booked a cruise for a month, booked off 14 days, then 1 day back, then another 14 days off. He called in sick his 1 day back. Here in the US, some people don't even get 14 days off a year. If I remember statistics correctly, the average was 13 days per year. Edit, after a quick search, public sector is 20 to 22, private is 13 to 15. Edit 2, I'm just posting averages. The range is from the fact that it comes from multiple Google results. Many people in the US are replying that they have a lot more or less. Keep in mind that this is averages for all jobs in the US. We weren't allowed to be friends with kids in grades above us, but we could be friends with kids in grades below us. That rule didn't last long. I feel like a lot of these could have been avoided by stopping to think for a few seconds. This is something you reread and then reread again in disbelief. I'm not even sure that counts as a backfire. That's just a facepalm. At an industrial site I used to work for, they introduced an absolutely no overtime policy. The people that most commonly worked overtime were the maintenance guys. They had to cut out their preventative maintenance in order to make their hours while being available for all shifts. It took 3 months of daily breakdowns before they decided to try something else. Honestly, having 3 shifts worth of maintenance guys doing things round the clock would be far better than my last job. I was part of the maintenance group for an aging 50-year-old power plant, and the management upstairs decided that only operators worked in shifts. Maintenance had to make do with only 8 to 5. Overtime for the workers barely existed, and since I was a frontline supervisor, I wasn't being paid anything at all to oversee them when things went into overtime, because I was reclassified as salaried while still being dinged for being late or taking leave, due to them giving us issues for the number of leaves compared to the rest of our country and our industry. The place I worked at did something similar. We worked a 40-hour work week, 5 days at 8 hours each. Here in Australia, after 38 hours you get paid overtime, so each week we got an option, either 2 hours overtime pay each week, or we could take off 2 hours early one day. Usually Friday it was often half and half with who did what, so there would still be a few mechanics to do any work. Management made a change where there was no overtime to be taken at all unless we got written approval by the GM. So we all started taking off at 1:30 on Friday, leaving the workshop deserted. So they started making us do a 7-hour and 36-minute workday 5 days a week. As a screw you, we would just not finish up and sign off any of the equipment after 1:30 on Friday. It was still going that way when I left. The mess that place turned into is why I never finished my apprenticeship. My old workplace did something similar. We used company trucks, so they instructed us to start cleaning up at the job site early so we could get back before the 8-hour mark. The problem was that it usually took a lot longer to finish a job that way because of all the wasted time driving, setting up, breaking down, and driving back. A job that could have been done in 1 day with 2 hours overtime now took 2 days to complete. But hey, at least they weren't paying overtime. Boss insists that lunchtime is from 12 to 12:30. No exceptions. Lunch is not paid time. The second day, he comes in hot to trot with something for me to do between 12 and 12:30 and needs it done right away. I look over at my clock, which says 12:09 or whatever, and say, "You said yesterday that lunch is from 12 to 12:30. No exceptions." And went back to my sandwich. If I don't get paid from 12 to 12:30, there's no way I'm working for free. We have the same thing with smoking breaks. I don't smoke, but I see my colleagues doing this. There's a fixed schedule which group can go to the smoking area at which times. Result? Smokers declining or leaving meetings or tasks mid-work to go for a smoke at the right time. So much trouble, but yet the management did not change anything. I had the exact same conversation with our boss. He insists lunchtime is unpaid, no exceptions. So we insist we don't work at lunchtime, no exceptions. He still doesn't get it. College removed chairs in the cafeteria so people wouldn't hang around. Now people just don't eat at the cafeteria. It's a ghost hall and most of the food is thrown away daily. Really sad. They did this at my school and a whole bunch of people just sat on the floor. Frankly, the floor was pretty disgusting, but it got them to put the tables and chairs back pretty quick. You'd think for the exorbitant college prices, you'd be allowed to hang out anywhere you want. Any support call lasting longer than 25 minutes must be reported to higher-ups for review, i.e. if you have too many, no matter if it's your fault or not, you get a disciplinary review. I implemented the rule of politely hanging up on a customer as close to 25 minutes as I can and call them right back. I'm sorry, I'm experiencing a small issue with my phone. Is it okay if I call you right back? Gotcha. Outgoing calls are not reported or recorded. It's amazing. Bosses are idiots sometimes. Man, ever since we instituted that rule about not having calls go over 25 minutes, our employees have gotten really good at keeping their calls to exactly 24 minutes. It's amazing. Any software related to the job, whether written inside or outside company time, belongs to the company, me. So if I write and release malware at home, it's the company's problem? The clause was immediately removed. That's hilarious. The company I work for now has the same provision, with the exception you can get written approval from the admin for that piece of software to be your own. All printers were defaulted to print two-sided and you were unable to disable that feature. The thought process being that this would 1. Reduce paper waste by literally cutting consumption in half, and 2. Prevent people from printing out personal crap on work printers. This was decided by a committee of people, primarily from HR, who were tasked by the CEO to find ways to reduce costs and improve our corporate culture. To improve our work culture, we basically decided that we'd be annoying about work printers and then we'd all sing together and have a Coke. What ended up happening instead was that corporate finance had a fit because you can't or shouldn't print financials double-sided, and the IRS doesn't take too kindly to getting filings delivered to them in that fashion. Reverse the policy? Nope. Just force areas to add blank pages into documents so that we trick the printers. HR then implemented their new Justapost system where you were rewarded for turning in anyone who was doing personal business on work computers or on work printers. The problem was that a stunning amount of personal business was actually stuff like employee benefit stuff, filing insurance forms, submitting flex pay receipts, scanning your transcripts for our tuition assistance program, etc. While the VP of HR decided to go full-on antagonist and say that employee benefit stuff wasn't work-related and needed to be done at home on your personal PC, our chief legal officer came down as our voice of moral reasoning to say that that was bull, and only then did some of the stupidity unfold. The printer thing was done officially once the CAO and CFO started getting double-sided financials. When they complained, their underlings gave them time studies to show the financial cost of having highly paid CPAs do crap like insert blank pages to trick printers instead of, doing accounting and stuff. Wow, how messed up do your decisions have to be that legal is the voice of reason on behalf of the employees? At that point, the only thing you should take away from this is that HR is about to cause lawsuits for the company, the literal inverse of what the department is supposed to be doing. My friend worked at a technician at a place that did installation for telecom, sound, cable, pretty much anything tech related really. The techs were paid by work order completion. Each job had a value that got paid out when you finished the work order. The experienced techs could finish more jobs in a day and made some seriously good money. They were motivated to work faster to get more jobs done, but also to do it correctly, because having to go back within a certain time window and fix a problem didn't pay out, so it lost money. Well, some new management came in and decided to change everyone to hourly wages. Their idea to make techs focus on getting the job done right and not rushing it. All the really good techs saw a massive pay cut from it and immediately quit. The rest of the techs suddenly had no reason to finish jobs quickly since you got paid the same whether you did 2 installs or 10 installs in one day. So everyone just started slacking off. Within a few weeks, the orders were backed up so bad install dates were pushed out for a month or more. And when people finally did get their stuff installed, it took all day instead of a couple of hours. That one change completely screwed over the company. Nothing like greedy management to completely mess up a good thing. There's some video on YouTube from a guy who does car work on this. He reenacts per hour and is sitting there slowly removing paint off a quarter panel with the tiniest tool he has, asking if it's 5 o'clock over and over. Then he switches to the per job version, grabs this huge air-powered sander and buzzes it all off, spray paints it in the new color, then peels out of his garage. No cell phones in high school. Security collected them when you walked in, put them in Ziploc bags, and locked them up. They lost like 5 people's phones. If I was the parent, I'd file a police report for a stolen phone and a small claim suit for the value of the phone. I'd be petty. This one is too easy to work around. Unless you have to totally empty your pockets for security and walk through a metal detector, just hand them a dummy phone. No one expects a kid to have more than one phone. Has anyone here ever been a soldier fighting against the US? What was it like? My grandfather was conscripted to fight for the North Korean military during the Korean War. He was at the Battle of Incheon, and he likened the dread that he felt to what one must feel when faced with a massive tidal wave that is about to engulf you and everyone you know. Couple this with the fact that many North Korean troops were told horror stories, that the American troops were cannibals, for example, and that the average American Marine was much taller and more physically robust than the average North Korean soldier. You can imagine how scared he was. He said that the Chinese and North Korean units were absolutely obliterated and that they never stood a chance against the Marines. All his words, not mine. My uncle, who I'll be seeing in a week for Thanksgiving, was there. He's 86 now. He still will not talk about it. His kids did not know he was in Korea until they were in their mid to late 20s. I remember when I was little, he would mow the lawn without a shirt, and I could see the scars on his abdomen. When I asked about them, he said they were from having his appendix taken out. Clearly not the case as an adult looking back on it. To this day, he is a staunch pacifist. This is much akin to the horror stories told in Japan after America dropped the atomic bombs, that American troops were savages who were going to come into Japan and rape all the women. That is why there was such a high suicide rate in Japan in the months after the war. Terrifying stuff. This is true. My grandfather tells me stories about Korea. He's a US Marine. He tells me about how easy it was to just mow through any resistance ever. I condensed this part. The only thing he said that ever scared him over there was waking to an earthquake. I was just a 7-year-old kid when my parents were watching CNN/BBC while I was playing video games. It was about some army jets taking off during the night. My dad turned to me and said something along the lines of, "It's begun, get to the basement now." Sometime later, the first explosions could be heard. The NATO/US bombing of Serbia in '99 had started. I remember spending time in the basement with other residents. I remember how the building shook when the bombs exploded. The fear of what was coming after the sirens went off. They destroyed all 3 bridges across the Danube in my city, cutting us off from a part of our family. One day, a bomb hit the refinery, so we couldn't stay in the basements anymore because of the CO2. Then, a bomb hit about 100 meters from our building, and shrapnel went through the blinds and windows and embedded itself in the opposite wall of our neighbor's flat. That was when we decided to move somewhere else where the Americans had nothing to aim for. A smaller town. We were safer there, but we could still hear the jets flying above us and bombs going off in the distance. When someone shot down the F-117 stealth jet, it was a huge hell yeah moment for Serbia. That's my short story of surviving a war versus USA. Edit, I forgot to mention they were supposedly only bombing tactical targets. One of my professors was an undergrad in Serbia during the war. A major government building in Belgrade was hit and the whole house shook violently like an earthquake. It was a very old stone building that collapsed. It was crazy. Her and a professor of hers tried to spend the time, the university got bombed a few times, trying to make some rudimentary communication device that the Serbian soldiers could use. That's really crazy. Hopefully this won't get buried, but my hopes are not too high. My father was a sniper during the bombardment in Yugoslavia, and my best friend's father was a member of the elite unit called Tigers while the war in Kosovo was raging. I'll be short because I have to sleep, but my father told me it was like trying to repel a wave on the beach by building a castle out of sand. You fought, you may have won some small encounters, be it by accident or pure luck, but you always knew that if they wanted, they could just kill us all and be done with it. Not a nice time for Yugoslavia, that's for sure. I was in Kosovo during the war. My sister almost got killed by a Serbian sniper. That's crazy. Like I said in another comment, that's how the KLA felt against the Serbian military. I don't think it was as bad as the US, but Serbia was fighting farmers with AK-47s. My dad was never with us, and I was scared I would never see him again. Some of my cousins died fighting. Others never returned from prison camps. We would hear horrible stories about Serbian soldiers and how they were animals. When we were marching across the border into Macedonia, some of the soldiers would give us food and tell us that they were sorry for what we were going through. It was surreal, and we didn't trust them. We actually threw the food away because we thought it was poisoned, even though we were starving. Now I realize that they were just trying to stop the suffering, I guess. Yugoslavia may have been bad, but it was nothing compared to time in Kosovo during the war. My great uncle fought on the German side of World War II. He fought all over the place. Africa, Italy, a small stint in Russia, and he defended France from the D-Day invasion. He was later able to move to the United States as a war refugee. He said that all of his officers would constantly tell him, when you're fighting the Americans, you must think of the least probable way they will attack you, because that will be the way that they attack you. He also said that when you were fighting Americans, more so than any other country's army he fought, you had to have eyes on the back of your head. Thank you for sharing. I always find it more than impressive to hear of soldiers who fought on more than one front in World War II. Sebastian Junger very briefly touches on this in War. He writes at length about how incredibly terrifying and physically transforming it is to be in combat for American soldiers. Given all that, Junger then asks one of the American soldiers what it must be like for a Taliban combatant to face off against an Apache helicopter, and the soldier pretty much just shudders. I remember watching a documentary where some Dutch, journalist joins the Taliban to film what it's like for them for like 3 months. Can't recall the name at the moment. At one point, the unit he's with gets information that their commander's position has been compromised and has to move to another location. It's briefly mentioned that the Taliban are used to attacks by drones, etc. However, the commander is seen to be visibly worried because it might be an AC-130. Edit, the name of the documentary is Taliban Behind the Masks, thanks to AdminAct for finding it. The part which I am talking about is at 23 minutes onward. From a combat tour in Afghanistan, I can definitely attest to that. When the Apaches / fast movers / AC-130 gunships show up, all of a sudden no one wants to play anymore. My great uncle was on the Italian side in World War II and was a captured POW to America. From what he told me, people wanted to be captured by the US. They were treated badly by their own and how great America was. In World War II, the Germans and some of our allies often commented on how chaotic the US Army appeared to be. I believe the quote was, "War is chaos and the American Army practices it on a daily basis." Other armies were slow, disciplined, methodical, etc. The perception was that Americans were unpredictable, undisciplined, but prone to ingenuity. Not just our generals, but right down to the grunt soldier level. I understand most who fought us viewed this as a strength. I remember reading an article a while back that one of the reasons Americans were so unpredictable to Europeans was the fact that they were one of the first national armies to use guerrilla tactics. And then we literally got a masterclass from fighting the various Indian wars. Gonna be buried, but oh well. My dad was an anti-aircraft gunner in Hanoi during the Vietnam War. He still wakes up screaming in the middle of the night. Quite often, really. My dad did basic training in Vietnam before he managed to escape, but as a kid, I remember him telling me stories about how messed up everything was during wartime. He was in his 20s when it was all going down, but he remembers walking through a field with his friends, and in a split second, several of them blew up from a landmine. Another story he told me that sticks with me to this day was when some of his friends were out drinking the night before they were supposed to enlist. Sitting around a table, completely hammered, singing songs and trying to forget about the terrible things they may have to encounter, one of the friends dropped a grenade underneath and ended it all before the hell even began. I had the opportunity to be OPFOR, pretend batteries, for a Spec Ops raid one night recently. We all had basic roles to play to make sure the good guys got practice at typical scenarios, but we were allowed to do whatever we wanted within the confines of the role we were given. My role was to be a squirter from the main target building. When the raid rolled up, I was to fire off some rounds and bolt as fast as possible over a hilly area and take up cover in an adjacent building. Then, when and if they came to my building, try to light up as many good guys as possible before being shot. The blacked out Hummers roll up and I unload my rounds. After emptying a mag, I bolt for the second building. I'm not usually a nervous type of person, but it was either the sprint or the fact that those Hummers were really terrifying, but my heart rate didn't slow down after I'd stopped running. I remember thinking two things. First, how strange it was that I was so scared, since I knew we were using simunition and this was a war game. And second, that I knew for a fact I was going to die. I was outnumbered and outmatched. They had night vision and I was armed with a single AK-47. The sense of dread was really vivid, and I remember imagining noises and sights and kept playing out an operator sneaking up behind me in my mind. The next surprising thing was that when they rolled up to my building, they weren't sneaky or silent as I imagined in the books, just as before. Yet they also weren't yelling at each other like I had learned from cop shows when they clear rooms. They were all talking to each other in calm voices and using first names, relaying information about the current situation in a methodical manner. I had left a light at one corner of the building in hopes that I could spring a trap from the other. I turned the corner and unloaded a magazine as fast as possible at the parked Hummer, barely aiming. All I could think about is the 10 to 20 guns all silently hunting for the slightest movement. Then, and I'll never forget this, I saw the most eerie sight imaginable. A red dot, bigger than I'd picture or ever seen at the range, racing across the sand towards me. As I threw in a new mag and turned the other direction to check my 6, I had just enough time to catch the second red dot repeating the first move as if they were synchronized divers. I've never been more impressed and mortified in my life. The next thing I felt was pretty surreal. In short, I was hit in the chest and in the back at the exact same moment by two operators rounding the sides of the building. I was on a corner. As I retreated from one side of the building to the other, fearing the first shooter, I ran directly into his counterpart. Their bullets, simulation, contacted me at approximately the same place on my chest and back. I listened to them clear the inside of the building. Those same cool methodical voices, first names, nothing like what I imagined. Then they searched my dead body. They began to take off my mask, paintball type contraption, to ID my face, and the plastic was cutting into my eyebrow. So I reached up to help them take it off without hurting me. One of the operators standing watch over me almost shot me and politely asked me to inform them verbally of any other movements I would make. Anyway, to wrap this long story up, afterwards I met all the guys that were on the op. There were about 20 and they were all smart as hell. Many of them had gone to college and enlisted anyway in order to join Spec Ops. Several of them spoke multiple languages and none of them were what I imagined. They were all humble, completely professional, and extremely thankful for us volunteers that they lit up. Basically, I don't know how it would feel to fight US soldiers with real ammo, and it made me pray I never will. It seemed pointless. Disclaimers, these guys weren't practicing with air support that night. It would have been even more terrifying with that on my mind. Also, a friend of mine who's an operator wasn't sure why they'd have red dots equipped while using night vision goggles. I have no idea, I just know what I saw. Maybe it was an intimidation factor? I don't know. It almost made me poop myself. You don't really wear night vision goggles to move around. Navigating stairs and other rough terrain, you want full field of view and true depth perception. Granted, I've only had really limited experience using them on exercises. Maybe special forces types wear them so much they can function with no depth perception and a tiny field of view. And the red dot's great for snap shooting with or without MVGs anyway. I'm military, but not in a trade that uses either of these. I just turn a screwdriver and explain to the guys who bring busted stuff in why using the radio to hammer tent pegs is a bad idea. While I cannot speak from experience, I'm an American, I can relay something my father mentioned to me a few years ago. He was a Marine during the conflict in Grenada and he was also active during the first Gulf War. He has never gone into great detail about his combat history and frankly I wouldn't want to have him rewalk those moments. But he did mention one time how you can see a man's fear before you see him. Kind of cryptic I know, but that one statement says a lot. He mentioned how you could hear them yelling and that the yells were not the confident kind. He meant that these men knew they were about to fight Americans and all their fancy toys and extreme training. They knew that the Marines were coming to kill them. My dad always told me that one of the greatest weapons our military has is the image that we conjure in the minds of our enemies. While it is one thing to fight someone who you feel is an equal or lesser match to you, it's a completely different scenario to fight someone who you truly feel is a monstrous force of war. I can't speak for the other branches strictly because I don't have a close personal relationship with someone who's enlisted and I have never enlisted. However, I can tell you that my father and all of his Marine buddies are absolutely vicious if prodded in an aggressive situation. In Grenada, the Marines were only supposed to take the top 10% of the island and the Army the rest. The Marines landed and began their attack. At the end, the Marines held about 90% of the island and the Army the rest. The OP-4 were fleeing from the Marines to fight the Army. I'm actually former US Army. I spent an entire summer serving as an OP-4 opposing force at one of the Army elite training centers. Basically, I fought US soldiers in a giant simulation. I'd actually agreed to some extent with the pushover comments for some units. The US Army is just so damn massive, some units certainly will look completely incompetent. Also, outside of a few SOF units and light infantry, there isn't a whole lot of emphasis placed on toughness. However, combat arms units are no joke. We have the best, most expensive training in the world, and by far the best equipment. I would not want to be on the other team. Chances are I'd be dead before I even saw an American soldier. My great-grandfather talked to me about being a Canadian in World War II. When a Canadian plane flew overhead, the Germans dove for cover. When a German plane flew overhead, the Canadians dove for cover. When an American plane flew overhead, everybody dove for cover. This will probably be buried, but my great-uncle fought for the Germans in the Battle of Normandy. He said that they were told that the Allies were being pushed back into the sea and that any Allies they saw were most likely small units that had slipped by. A few days later, my great-uncle woke up to find a regiment of Americans camped within sight of the farmhouse they were in. Him and his squad surrendered. I have a girlfriend from Iraq who had brothers in the Iraq army. They defected pretty quick and live here now, but they tell me how insane the American arsenal was. While Iraq soldiers' main method of transport was pickup trucks, motorbikes, and bicycles, the Americans were transporting people in armored personnel carriers that were impossible to damage. Also tells me that the quality of training was noticeable, as you would never see the Americans, you would just be shot because they knew how to move from cover to cover and remain undetected. Her brothers never killed anyone. They defected once troops entered the country. They were only 16 at the time. Yeah, this is the closest I've got to an answer. My family is Panamanian. Being a civilian in a country invaded by US troops is terrifying. Tanks stopped in front of my grandma's house and started firing over it. My cousins were all really young when it happened, and they were absolutely terrified. Unfortunately, I don't have access to someone who may have fought for the dictator at the time that the US was ousting. From Iraq here. My father fought on the defensive lines in Iraq during the Gulf War, when the West forces entered Iraq. He said it was very scary to have planes fly over. You do not see them when they're coming because they're very fast, so damage and death happens with no warning. Planes were followed by soldiers, but he did not get close to them. He said everyone knew the fighting was pointless because Saddam was not a good leader, and he thought he was. Saddam thought he could fight back, but UN had better leaders and more tools. My father told me it was like fighting a bad disease because you don't know what you're fighting and you don't know how to fight it. Not the enemy, but was in communications, and we would get intel from counter-intel guys from intercepted cell phone calls. Talibans would be scared out of their minds when it came to engaging Marines. One report that I remember well was a commander ordering guys to engage in firefights because they wanted to do a show of force. The guy he was ordering gave a million excuses and was scared of the new Marines because they thought they were special forces. We had a bunch of new gear, chest rings, radios, and thermals. They ended up engaging a patrol later that week. We killed most of their cell that day. My great-uncle flew A6M0 Zeke fighter aircraft for the Japanese Imperial Navy. He survived one attack on an American carrier task force but was wounded and relegated to light duty in China. He described the first time seeing the US fleet circa 1944 as both awe-inspiring and extremely disheartening, simply the futility of trying to fight the US. I actually gave a talk on this topic today. Not just the US, but basically on the losing side. I suppose I'd sum it up. The winners write history. I guess the end result of facing an army like the US, a technological monster, is you're not going to be the one writing that history book. Currently in Berlin, and I just get my group, Australia, US, Canada, etc., to imagine no war memorials in their town, no Veterans Day, no Anzac Day, no parades, no walls listing the dead, and then I remind them for a large portion of soldiers here during World War I and II, it wasn't they were evil. It was they were, in their minds, fighting for their home the same as our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. We get to remember our dead soldiers, to raise them up as heroes. Those that lose don't. It's a strange but powerful thing to be allowed to remember.
What are your dating regrets? Getting so caught up in the fun early stages of the relationship and planning activities for dates that I forgot to just relax and be myself. Take it a week at a time and see how things went. Pretty sure it made me seem too pushy, so things didn't end very well for me. Lesson learned. Chill the F out. The holy trinity of bad dating. 1. Not listening when they told me they weren't interested. 2. Not listening when they told me they were crazy. 3. Not listening to myself when I realized I didn't want to be with someone anymore. This is the first time I've ever spelled it out for myself like this, and I think I'm seeing a pattern.
That I admittedly hid some of my hobbies and interests because I was scared they looked dorky. As soon as I stopped hiding it, I met my partner.
Don't be afraid to show your hobbies or your interests to your girlfriend, boyfriend, significant other, whatever. Just, if they like you for who you are. And if they don't like you because of something as silly as a hobby or an interest that you have, then they don't really like you. Not taking chances with various girls and women throughout my life when I had the opportunities to. And I didn't try to date more in my early 20s, and now I'm in my mid-30s with a combined relationship experience of a little over a year. I basically have the romantic intelligence of a 16-year-old.
Shooting more shots and being way more confident in my 20s. I was a very good-looking guy with very low self-esteem. Funny to look back at now I'm 46.
So far, my biggest regret was moving halfway across the country with someone, and when I was struggling to adjust to that location, they refused to move a few hours for me to a different location. That really hurt. Felt like I gave up so much for them, and it turns out they wouldn't do the same for me. I'll never move for love again. Another thing about this relationship, and a warning to others, is that if a person says they hadn't spent enough time being single before y'all got together, just break it off so they can do their thing. While it might be hard to give up on something good, the feeling of regret for not getting to experience more opportunities and meet more people will constantly be in the back of their head. I could go on, but the point is to have clear communication. That also means that if someone tells you something, actually listen to what they're saying and don't just hear what you want to hear. I always used to say, always give them at least one date to make their case, and you can decide after if you want to continue. Some people are so obviously a walking red or black flag of personality issues that even a single afternoon will be too much time to waste. Just decline and move on. 2. Don't stay with someone because of how they used to make you feel or because you owe them for something they did a long time ago. Staying in a dying relationship doesn't make breaking up later any better and doesn't make you happy now. Also, not my personal mess up, but marriage and or kids won't fix a weak relationship. If it's dying and nobody really cares, get it over with and move on. Number 3. Not mine, but I've seen it firsthand enough. Some people have issues, and while these aren't deal breakers themselves, you shouldn't enter into a dating relationship for the purpose to be free of therapy or to fix them/date people that will fix you. People need to be in a place where they are able to date others, not go looking for someone to fix them or prey on broken people. And if you are with someone that becomes too much baggage, you can stay to help, you can leave if it gets above your pay grade, but you have to make sure you are taken care of too. I give this a 7 out of 10. Solid advice. The fact that I'm not very good at it. Giving my best to the wrong person. Letting them get away with bad behaviors. Being overly romantic and giving to someone who doesn't do the same. Overly apologizing even when I didn't do anything inherently wrong. Begging someone to stay. I screwed over someone who truly loved me. Pushed her away when it was my time to step up. I'll regret that for the rest of my life. She was such a catch. Married now. I should have been more open about my feelings with those I was interested in back around high school and early adulthood because I'm pretty sure a few may have been interested in me, but things just never got started. I should have cut communication once I found out she had been cheating on me since the start of our relationship, instead of doing some on-again, off-again bullcrap for a decade or so. You know, as someone who's personally witnessed very many on-again, off-again relationships, they are one of the most frustrating things to bear witness to, especially when your friend goes from top of the world to as low as can possibly be in such a short amount of time. And now, I'm not saying that people can't make mistakes in relationships, get back together, and then, actually learn from that mistake and be better, but, you need to have a certain degree of self-awareness and recognize what the actual issues are. Like, if you're sat at home, you're like, damn, I want to get back with my girl, or damn, I want to get back with my man. Just have a freaking anime character arc for at least 5 months or something. Think about what the actual issues were. Think about yourself. Think about them. Judge whether or not it's worth it. Let that anime character arc really set in, Despite many warnings from people trying to help me, I put all my eggs in the same basket. Married young and devoted myself to someone thinking that devotion would always be reciprocated. But apparently people change even if you don't. Always be prepared for the other shoe to drop, I guess is my advice. Kinda cynical, I know, but recent experiences taught me a lesson I never wanted to learn. Went on a really great date recently. We really hit it off. We were at this bar until closing, just talking. He wanted to come back to mine, and I thought, hey, he seems really sweet, and we are having a lot of fun together. Why not? He stays up for hours talking and laughing, and we wind up doing it. We continued talking even after that, and we were up until 6 a.m. The next day, I wrote, hey, had a great time. I'd be happy to see you again. And he said he also had a great time and how fun I was, but he didn't want to date because he didn't feel it. I was sad, but you can't help it. I asked if he wanted to be friends, and days go by. He ends up just reading the message. No response. I know it's a stereotype for men to do this kind of thing, but I actually have never experienced this before. I've only had guys be really upfront and honest, or I could tell they were just trying to get in my pants. So now I'm left embarrassed and feel slightly used. So I regret that. Dating someone who always wanted things their way, my life scheduled around what they wanted to do, thinking they would change and it would balance out in time. They were selfish and self-centered. That was the core issue, not a scheduling one. I wish I would never have been exposed to this hookup culture, being made to believe that once I was of legal drinking age that I need to go and have one-night stands, etc. I'm so numb inside that I just continued to date and I don't know how to attach. I'm pretty convinced at this point I wouldn't know love if it slapped me in the face. Well, that is, geez. That made me kind of sad. I had not one, not two, but 3 girls I had huge crushes on out their feelings for me on the last day of high school before moving on to college elsewhere, essentially saying, you should have asked me out. Never could pick up on signals. Ended up meeting my wife and mother of my 3 kids almost 15 years now on a dating app after college, so it all worked out for the better. That I should have jumped at the chance with my current girlfriend 6 years ago. We went to the movies as friends and I really liked her. She casually asked me if I actually wanted to date her. I said that she was a catch, but I was too old for her. I really didn't want to be the creepy older guy, so we are now together 6 years later because I at least had enough social skills not to mess up the friendship in the meantime. Dating someone I liked the idea of but not being into them. She was a professional, a grown adult who could communicate her desires. She was enthusiastic about sex and very much enjoyed one another's company. We would have been fantastic friends with benefits. I just wasn't that into her and she was into me. I knew it, but rather than being fair to her and ending it on transitioning to a friends with benefits situation, I kept it going. Eventually, she dumped me because she was jealous of my female friends. Nothing was going on, but she recognized that they were harming her mental health and didn't want to put up with seeing photos of me hanging out with them. I don't regret anything because I believe you make the choices right for you at the time based on the information you are presented with. Dating her taught me that it's not fair to treat people like that, and I was voluntarily single for 5 years, rather than date people I was only casually interested in. I learned a lot from her, so no regrets, but I do wish I had ended it better. Being too afraid to look like a fool. Only dated superficially, so dated lots of women I didn't actually have things in common with. Invented a single me and a boyfriend me. Do not do this. Always ended up being a boy toy and not a boyfriend and not speaking up about it. My biggest dating regret is expecting the character of my dating options to be better than my own level of personal development. I guess this person means that they always expected the person they were dating to be more mature or just know better than them. I'm not quite sure what they mean. I feel like I've got an inkling of what they are talking about, but I'm not quite there. Chasing. As a woman, pursuing men always felt wrong, but sadly, I've always had to do it because I'm painfully average and invisible. I could stand in front of a beige wall and you'd only see a beige wall. It leads to nothing great anyway. I always end up with someone who's desperately in love with, you guessed it, a very beautiful woman I will never be like. I am someone you pick only if you've made peace with the fact that the one you want will never be yours, so you've decided to settle for less. Dating is absolutely crap for me. If I knew that I'd have to do all the chasing and all the work and all the pathetic attempts to be the best version of myself, which still isn't good enough, I'd have never dated a man. Being alone and asexual isn't all that bad. Okay, you I feel very bad for because it sounds like your confidence has been utterly crushed, and I don't believe anyone deserves to feel that way, especially about their physical appearance, which you just can't help. I had several relationships with very insecure and unstable people with a lot of mental illnesses, and I can say out of all of the crap that I lived through so far, these relationships were the absolute worst part of it. I was always just too open-minded and tolerant, especially knowing how hard life can be with aforementioned issues, and didn't want to close the door to the potential person of my life. But after my last disaster of a partner, I don't even have enough trust in other people left to consider a relationship with them. I slightly regret hamming it up so much in the video earlier on because, damn, this is getting kind of dire and sad. I tried dating 2 girls once. I couldn't handle splitting my emotions, so I dumped one and committed to the other. That girl dumped me, and the other girl wouldn't date me again. Comedy. Oh, also I remember bringing girls to my room when I was younger, them laying in my bed with me and me not doing anything because I was just a little too respectful. Didn't end up with the vast majority of them. One even bluntly commented on how I should have made moves. Cringe, man. I matched with this girl on Tinder a few years back. In our conversation, she told me she was on a temporary visit in the country and that she's staying at a hotel. We agreed we'd meet outside the hotel and go for a drink of coffee at a nearby Starbucks. When I reached the front of the hotel, she didn't exactly walk out of the hotel, but in fact, someone had dropped her at the hotel. That was the first red flag. As I greet her and introduce myself, I suggest we walk for a bit and make our way to Starbucks, but she was adamant of a nearby cafe that she's pointed out across the street, and I was like, okay, sure, why not? The rest of the day was comprised of just getting to know her and what she's doing here on a visit, and while this was happening, she proceeded to order wine numerous times and kept walking back and forth to the restroom. Second red flag. And by the end of our 2-hour-long date, the bill came, and I presume it was going to be at least a 100+ billing, but to my shock, it ended up costing me $560 plus, and I reluctantly paid for it as it is customary where I'm from that guys pay the bill if you're the one who invited the person to the date. And when the bill was paid, she wanted to go clubbing, and I told her, sure, let's meet tomorrow night and go, but I just ended up blocking her and deleting her contact info. I found out later that this is a common scam that happens in my country, and apparently the cafe and her are both in cahoots. She drags in the victims, and the cafe artificially inflates the prices of their menu to overcharge me. The worst part? This was the first date I ever went on, and it took a lot of courage for me to put myself out there, and after that date, it frickin' broke me, and I felt so violated that I haven't gone on a date since. Not dating in my 20s, for one. My early life was something of a sob story because of a butthole doctor in my teens. I had a serious, life-threatening illness when I was a teenager, but we caught it in time and treated it. But this doctor told my mom point-blank right in front of me, "You realize he's going to die from this, right? This kid won't live to see 30. This will probably come back and we won't be able to treat it." Mom fired him from my case after that and a few horrible missteps of bedside manner. I'm 44, by the way, and fine. It never came back, but it screwed me up for years. I lived my late teens and 20s like I was gonna die soon. I didn't invest anything in my life. I lived it up. I partied. I screwed around a lot. Why would I bother getting into a relationship if I was going to die? I mean, sure, I dated a couple times, but nothing more than a couple months, and the problem was, I got so used to being alone and self-sufficient that when I got into my 30s, I tried to date more, but lacked a lot of relationship skills and just really struggled being a part of a couple. Being a partner. Cheating. Don't do it, kids. It's not worth it. I've loved 4 women in my life and not a single one of them would look my way, and knowing it's my fault makes it 100 times worse. I'm sorry, Amanda. Not researching the guy first. There was a guy I went on a few dates with last year. Really liked him. He ended up dating someone else. A few nights ago, I decided to find out his last name because he never told me. When I found out his last name and looked him up online, I found articles about how he sexually assaulted a 7-year-old girl he was babysitting. The dude only served 4 months. I dodged an absolute missile. God damn it, where are the Gary Plochets of the world when you need them? I'm 22 and I have yet to date anyone, so I guess my biggest regret in dating would be not having dated anyone. I suffered something I've always called the weirdness, which is me bottling things up and ending up in major anxious episodes which have destroyed relationships and made some very difficult. It also created either an over-attachment or rejection of people. My style is anxious preoccupied attachment, and it's the first time in 46 years I've been able to give the weirdness a proper name. I regret not hooking up with women before meeting my boyfriend. I feel like he's the one, got me, so I will never know what it's like to sleep with a woman, and it does make me sad sometimes. I also feel like a threesome would ruin our relationship, so that's out of the question. You know, that's absolutely wonderful. I'm really happy that you think this guy is the one, and good luck running away from your gay thoughts. Taking back my ex after she cheated. Don't ever do that. It'll never be the same. So many, either not understanding that they're not interested or worse, not understanding that they are interested. I could have lost my virginity years before if my teenage brain wasn't immune to logic and not so subtle hints. On the other hand, I'm beginning to be a believer of the theory that somehow my life is how it should be. If I had gotten together with that sexy girl that threw herself at me when my friend wanted to leave, I probably would have been a father at 19, which never in my life looked or looks as a good idea. I have too many. One is simply that I took too long to start doing it and then wasn't very good at it and struggled with it for years. I didn't date in high school or even try, and then in college I found myself getting a little older and having none of the experience that most of my peers seem to have. I eventually ended up in a relationship with an older, 30-ish woman with kids. I want to be clear, I don't think that relationship was in any way exploitive, but it just wasn't right for me in the long run, and I never had the experience of having a normal college girlfriend. Maybe it was out of reach for me. I don't know. After that, there were a lot of dry spells. Not just sex-wise, in terms of dating. It eventually worked out and I'm married, but I just wish the road there was easier. I don't know why I needed to go through so many rough, lonely patches. There is a particular situation that haunts me though. I had a date that went well. We were both in our mid-20s. To set the stage here, a lunch/coffee date turned into, hey, let's walk around for a while, which turned into going to an art museum, which eventually turned into getting dinner because we'd spent a lot of the day together. We seemed to have a good vibe and I thought things were going really well. Unfortunately, because of what you can infer from my first paragraph about my own timidity with dating, I eventually sought out a lot of advice, mostly on the internet, that turned out to be not great. I had been used to asking girls if they wanted me to kiss them at the end of a date, but I'd gotten the feedback that a lot of women would find that to be too timid compared to just going for it, and therefore a turnoff, that it seemed too weak. So I finally reasoned, hey, this is going well, as we went to the train and departed. I leaned in and kissed her. After I pulled back, I realized she was mortified. We walked away, but since our respective trains were not showing up yet, I decided to walk back to her and ask if she was okay. She explained that while she was okay, she was incredibly embarrassed because she had never been kissed before. I felt horrible. The train station was hardly the best setting for someone's first kiss, but also I hadn't realized she was so nervous about it and may not have wanted to do it that quickly. We talked a bit afterwards, but our messaging eventually petered out. A lot of friends, including women, told me that while yes, I probably should have asked, I shouldn't feel too bad about it, and that it was probably just her embarrassment, that it may have even been a relief for her in the long run that she got it over with. But I still feel horrible and still wish sometimes I could find her again and apologize. Asking a 22-year-old who looked like Nicole Kidman if I could use her back door. The next day she slapped me and never spoke to me again. Oh my. Trying to be the cool GF. As a teenage girl in the dating world, people see setting boundaries as the crazy GF who doesn't let their partner do anything. So I wanted to refrain from that as far as possible because I was 15 going on 16 trying to impress this 18-year-old. Boy, was I wrong. We needed those boundaries. I let him walk all over me so much for the first 6 months of our relationship that setting up boundaries in later time was a lot harder and frustrating for both of us. I'm now 17 turning 18, and even though it's only been 2 years, I'm really happy with my progression and sense of awareness. So many signals I didn't respond to because I thought, what if I'm wrong? 1. Persevering too long with someone who wasn't good to me because even though he treated me terribly, we could have so much fun together. 2. Then having learned my lesson, persevering too long with someone who was good to me because even though we never had much fun together, he treated me well. Finally, I realized that I had overcorrected and I met my husband who both treats me well and who I can have fun with. Plenty of other guys in there too, but I don't regret any of them. I regret taking my early dating life so seriously. We all know we're not marrying our high school partners. I should have prioritized my enjoyment of fleeting opportunities when they presented themselves because 40-year-old me isn't getting the chance to make out with Amanda Davino under the bleachers at the Friday night football game ever again. My regrets were that I struggled with social anxiety and depression during my prime years, so I forfeited much of the fun, i.e. dating, sex, relationships, that I likely would have otherwise had if I were not so marginalized by those issues. My late teens and all through my 20s and 30s were a dull blur. Kids, it's important you don't waste your life, and I don't mean do dangerous, stupid things. You should still think about what you're doing, but for the love of God, don't waste your life.
What's life like as a guy who pretends to be female online, or vice versa? About a decade ago, I was on a dating site without much luck and getting very few replies to messages, so I thought the best way to get tips on what not to do was sign up a fake profile as a woman and see what kind of messages were sent and just not do anything that appeared more than once. Hello folks. Just to shut down a certain set of debates early on, this video is about male-identifying individuals who knowingly present a misleading personality online in order to pursue or obtain something. This is, and I can't stress this enough, not any sort of commentary or criticism on trans people. You'd hope I wouldn't have to say that, but you never know on the internet. Okay, on with the video. When I was at university, we were doing a project on communities and online communities. Our group got assigned to look into and research Second Life, as at the time it was still quite new and a current thing, and as I was the one with the best laptop, I got the job of playing it. We drafted some questions we'd try and answer, and some kind of short surveys people could answer for data for our presentation at the end, and I made a male character that looked like me and jumped on in. After visiting a few social hubs and numerous attempts and hours, not one person would really help out, or they wouldn't give us much more than stupid answers. One of the people in our group thought it was just me and came and watched and realized people were kind of unhelpful towards us. So we re-rolled my character as a female, tall, slim, blonde, and acted a bit more like a video game noob. We got more help almost instantly than I'd got in hours. People would even see us talking to someone and then come on over to volunteer their answers and opinions as well out of the blue. Asking if we needed things, showing us places to go. One guy bought us some outfits and gave us some in-game currency and let us have access to his house. So, yeah, we pretended to be a female to get a project done. This is only topic adjacent. I have a female-sounding summoner name on League of Legends. I'm a support main, and I'm usually pretty positive as well. I never received any sort of gift from a rando. I have had tons of people ask me if I'm a girl though, almost always followed by, "I knew it," or them telling me they've got a bet going with a friend. Overall, playing Halo 3 online with a mic back in the day was substantially worse. The top questions I got were, "Are you fat?" or "Are you hot?" or "What's your Facebook?" Always followed by excessive crouching on my head upon death. I pretend to be female online when I publish light romance. In the United States, when I first started writing romance, I got an unpleasant amount of attention as a male author in the genre, and found it a lot safer for me to write under a female pen name. Then people read and enjoyed the stories, but didn't get creepy and stalk me. This makes sense. I was in a book club back in college, and we had a few Nicholas Sparks books in our lineup, and many of the girls in the group were absolutely swooning over him. They believed that the perfect romantic male leads were manifestations of the author. It doesn't help that Mr. Sparks is handsome as well. We ended up going to his book signing in a nearby city as a book club event. Pretty normal, but then a few of the girls followed him into surrounding states to try and attend more signings, and were getting a little obsessive. One girl was actively, but as far as I know unsuccessfully, trying to find out which hotels he was staying at during his tour. Straight up crazy. Had to do it once as an exercise in a computer crimes class. We made our accounts as teenage girls for a chat room. Within 5 to 10 minutes, there were guys messaging you to turn your camera on, blah blah blah, and they'd pop up, eggplant out, and just try to crank something out to you after you told them that you're female. I had a guy from India willing to pay for my flight over that day to meet him. Then we told him we weren't really a teen girl and that their information would be turned over to the police. Good times. Yep, it does exist, and this isn't some sort of internet points fake story. I'd just gotten a new keyboard attachment for my PlayStation 3 controller and wanted to test it out, so I jumped on PlayStation Home and walked around and chatted with people. My avatar was an attractive woman, I should point out. So anyways, I walked into this bowling alley and sat down next to this random guy and struck up a conversation with him. Nothing crazy, just chatting. I really liked this new keyboard. Anyways, in the middle of our conversation, some other player in a singlet walks over and starts to hit on me. I should point out that at no point had I said I was a girl, I just had a girl avatar. This new guy starts saying some pretty lewd things, and the person I was chatting with literally gets out of the chair and gets in this guy's face telling him to get lost and the lady is taken. It was so absurd to see this person about to fight in a video game over a fictional female, I just couldn't stop laughing. After the new guy walked away, I jokingly decided to play the female part. I thank this player for saving me from that jerk, and it's so annoying to be hit on by creeps like that all the time. We talked for about an hour, and in this short time span he started to reveal more personal things about himself. He talked about how he didn't have much luck with women and how he wasn't able to last long in bed. As the conversation went on, it got more and more sad and I began to feel sorry for this person, so I said I had to go and logged off for the night. I logged onto my PlayStation the next day and was greeted with a bunch of messages from this player asking where I'd been and if I wanted to join him on PlayStation Home again. I felt a bit creeped out by the sheer amount of messages, so I ignored them and played some other game. This went on for several days, and after a while I got tired of being spammed and replied to this person, pretending to be her brother, and told him my sister was using my PlayStation just for that one night, and she went back to college and wouldn't be home for a few weeks, but I'd tell her he was asking about her. He stopped bothering me after that, but it really put into perspective what some women have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. In short, I tried to test out my new keyboard in a game and ended up getting a whole bunch of clingy messages for several days. Back in the day when I still played online poker, I used to pose as a girl because male players often wouldn't take them as seriously, especially if you play tight aggressive. Anything helps to get an edge, you know? The change in the player's general behavior was very noticeable. A lot of flirting all of a sudden. Of course, not from the majority, but still. It gave me a glimpse into how aggravating things can be for women sometimes. I've played too many male characters, and I do it for the role-playing. I'd pretend to be an 11-year-old girl on Omegle, and when people hit on me, I gave them my phone number, which was the phone number of their nearest FBI office. I can't imagine anything actually comes from this, but that's got to be a hilarious few moments, right? Calling the number. Thank you for calling the North Central Regional Headquarters for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Please listen to the following. Click. Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap! I did it for the same reason most in the early 2000s did. To get free stuff on RuneScape. Thanks for the gold, but I'll need a little more if you want me to be your girlfriend. This is a rumored trick as old as the narrator. Fun times. I do genuinely remember all of my male classmates going on about this in school. I wonder if it's still true, what with the recent resurgence of the game. It probably is, but to like a lesser degree, right? You know, at first I did this out of boredom and curiosity. Eventually, I transitioned into feeding my creative writing imagination. I was 13 to 16 years old, I think it was 2004 through 2007 back in the day, where it was fairly common to have online gaming buddies, and there weren't really things like Skype or Discord or webcam to immediately blow your cover. It started on an older game called Gunbound or MapleStory. I had a steady group of friends who played, and I just wanted to see how adding a girl into the mix would change them. So I made a fake account, and I would accidentally join their game and play with them, flirt with them, stuff like that. I think it took less than 4 games before all 3 of them added me and started to have private messages. I'll admit, back then I thought it was fun as heck, and I don't know if it was catfishing or trolling. I just saw it as a form of entertainment, and it made my friends happy. I went so far as double logging in as both myself and the female, and introducing myself to myself just so they wouldn't get suspicious. Like I thought maybe they'd realize that I was never on when she was on. That kind of thing. It went on for about 3 years, give or take a couple of months, and they never found out that I had fun with all of them, and they had thoroughly seemed to enjoy my company as the girl. I even made another account as that girl's friend, which really sealed the deal on any doubt they were having about her. I never told any of them about it in the end. It went way too far once they started confessing their feelings and future plans of meeting up when we all turned 18, and all that stuff is when I knew I had to end the whole thing. I told them that she was moving to live with her grandparents overseas and that her life would be changing. I logged on as her less frequently until it got to the point where she was just too busy to continue playing with us. The most awkward or guilt-inducing part was how sad they all were for like weeks and weeks after she finally disappeared. It was fun up until that point, where I kind of realized I just really broke the hearts of 3 of my closest internet buddies. I don't really talk to any of them anymore, but looking back, it was a pretty messed up thing that I did. I learned a lot about myself and my friends, and just how guys react in general to girls online. Please, other 13-year-olds, don't do what I did. I pretended to be a girl so I could join a clan of girl gamers on Call of Duty. It's not like I went to great lengths, but I did it because they were, and have been, far better teammates and allies than the game will ever give me naturally. No regrets. Didn't they hear you talk and realize you were male? If the Girl Gamers Reddit is any indication, they won't give a crap as long as he's not being weird. Most women who game just want to have a good time without being treated differently for being women. The girl-only spots are more for keeping a positive, accepting environment. They can be just as much fun as tolerant guy groups as long as you don't mind the occasional bit of girl talk or period jokes. I did it to see the female character model in RuneScape. I'd already had a dude character and I wanted a second one. I created one, logged in, wandered around, and some guy offered to make me full leather armor for free. After that, he wanted me to follow him to do some quests. When we got that far away from anyone else, he said he wanted to cyber with me, and I promptly logged the F out and never played that character again. I was like 12 years old. I was on a dating app to assess my competition. I once did this online. I was bored as heck and I wanted to see the extent that guys were willing to go to. I got like $300 for a picture of me. It was fake, but he still sent it. I refunded him and told him. He got real mad. It was funny as hell. Not sure if this counts as pretending, but I prefer to pick female characters in Mamorpagas because I want to cross-dress in real life, but I'm too shy. I decided it's the best way to get good interactions with players in chat on Overwatch, so I'll just act like a girl in chat, good luck, have fun, kissy face, and stuff like that while I pick Mercy and play well, and they don't blame me for the loss from their crappy positioning. As a girl who's actually decent at certain video games, reading this actually makes me feel slightly salty. As soon as I'm on my mic, people treat me like some scrub. Either that or I get the white knight treatment. Ugh. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I did this once, and believe me, it was both informative and funny. My main reasons for trying to do so were to understand the psychology of girls by imitating it, and to understand the behavior of men from a girl's point of view. And this is what I learned during the process. First, boys go to any length to send their undressed photos. They want your Facebook, Kik Messenger, and phone number instantly. Like, really? Don't you have any respect for privacy? Then when you start seeing from girls' perspective, you really start understanding them and their problems. You challenge your views and beliefs, and you begin to judge yourself based on your prior interactions with women. Oh boy, I hope my girlfriend never finds out. The game was RuneScape. At first, it was just a joke. However, after some years, I really grew into the character. I'd created a name, personality, life. My alternate life was just very much a reality to the people I played with. I learned a lot about human interaction and how people treat women differently. It helped me understand women a bit better as far as perspective, even if it was just through a game world behind the protection of a computer screen. In fact, playing RuneScape as a female character taught me how to socialize and adapt to real people. In turn, this has greatly built my interviewing skills to a point where I've landed myself a pretty prestigious position. In short, I'm a straight male, I played as a female in RuneScape. I learned human interaction. RuneScape is the reason for my social ability and success. A kid we went to high school with claimed he met a girl at a hockey tournament. I played on his team and he did not. And he said they were dating and they were constantly doing the deed. She then added all of us on MySpace and MSN and would constantly talk to us. She was around until she was invited to a party, and then she mysteriously disappeared. Every time. We all know it was you, Rob, especially since her pictures were all pictures of some girl from Google. Okay, I wonder how many catfishes have pictures that come up at the top of your results if you just Google hot girl pictures. Maybe that's what you should do when you start pursuing people online, folks. Or better yet, just don't pursue them. Just let them do whatever they're doing on the site. Alright, my time to shine. I usually play female characters in online games because, well, I don't know, I guess because I like to dress them up. Not in a pervy way, guys. I don't get to have that fun in real life as a guy. Also, I'm not really interested in real life in makeup or clothes, but I do enjoy being able to show off cool outfits and mix and match my character's hairstyle, color, skin tone, shirts, skirts. And in most games on male characters, you don't have as much freedom. I'm currently playing Guild Wars 2, also called Fashion Wars 2, and I absolutely love the way my second main character has turned out. With the color palette and set style, I've matched multiple pieces on different sets. Do I pretend to be an actual girl online? Not anymore, but I used to. When I was 14, I used to play a game called Fliff, and I made female characters back then too, until something unpleasant happened that made me stop pretending to be a girl. It's something that I feel ashamed about even now, 10 years later. You see, I had this female support character, and one day I met a guy. He asked me if I was a girl in real life, and I said yes, just on a whim. He then started courting me. It turns out this guy was some super rich dude from Belgium who used to spend a lot, and we're talking like 300 to 400 euros every week, of money in the game's cash shop. For all of the people who don't know what Fliff is, well, it was a game where having cash shop money meant you were way better, stronger, and richer than anybody else in the game. This guy started gifting me stuff from the cash shop, and one day asked, "Do you want to be my GF?" I had no idea what it meant to have a GF in a video game. I still don't really understand, but I just said yes because I was a bag of crap. Whatever, free money, right? He became really attached to me. I was supposed to only play with him as his support partner. I wasn't supposed to play with other people. He then started asking me personal questions related to real life, and sometimes I replied truthfully, like where I was from. Idiot. And some other times I just skirted around the issue, like when he asked for my phone number, picture, or Skype or MSN. This went on for like 6 or 7 months. I had a real-life friend who played the game with me who knew about it, and we kind of laughed about it, but deep down I was getting a bit creeped out. Then one day the guy said he'd be visiting Italy in a month's time or so, and he wanted to meet up. Keep in mind, I told him I was a 15-year-old girl. Creepy as F. This guy was like a manager or vice president of a company in Belgium. He was at least 30. That's when I seriously got grossed out and realized it had to stop. We both were playing the same class in the game, but I was support and he was a DPS kind of character, so our equipments were completely different, and yet compatible. So one day I asked him, "Hey, did you know I never tried soloing a boss on my own? Since I'm support, I wanted to try it out at least once. Could you trade me your weapon and shield so I don't die and help me heal while I solo this boss?" You know where this is going, but bear with me. The guy was so rich that his weapon, and especially his shield, were like the only ones of that kind in the whole server. More or less. Let's say that there were a total of 6 or 7 in the whole game at that point in time, and he had both of these things. They were pretty much priceless and worth in the ballpark of thousands of euros in cash shop money each, just to trade them around. Anyway, the guy was completely clueless, and he traded them with me. That's when I said something like, oh crap, I'm lagging, and I put myself invisible in the chat, and just logged out. I made a new account and started from scratch, and I didn't touch that other account for at least a week or so. Once I felt comfortable with that, I logged back onto my old account and traded all the stuff on it to my real-life friend, with the threat of me killing him if he tried to scam me, since I knew where he lived. The plan was that he'd trade it to my other character. My mailbox was full of flames from the guy's whole guild and everything. They were mad, and I guess rightfully so from their perspective. I saw that guy again one day, just sitting in the middle of the square, doing nothing, being away from keyboard, with still a lot of money and fancy pets and weapons and everything. I felt pretty bad for him. I realized I was a real crapbag for doing what I did, and I felt ashamed of myself. I promised myself I'd never do it again, and as I said, years later I do still cringe about it. That poor guy, regardless of how creepy and borderline illegal he was, he got scammed out of thousands of euros of in-game items and a promise of an underage girlfriend. Ugh. And this is now the story of why I make it clear I'm a guy every time I play a female character online nowadays. I mean, he was hitting on what he thought was a 15-year-old girl. Don't beat yourself up about it too much. I publish under a pseudonym, and figured if I'm going to fake a name, I might as well fake some other details. Interestingly enough, I don't change any behavior or anything, and it flies just fine. It's been covered a fair bit in some of these other comments, but people treat women much differently online. And now I've experienced it firsthand. I've had people online fall for me, I've had people treat me as less capable for my assumed gender, I've had people act unusually nice to me and then act less so to others in a group. It's all pretty weird. Now, unlike gaming, the whole publishing under a different gender thing does potentially have some fallout when people find out one way or the other if you make it big. It probably shouldn't matter, but I imagine that some people who felt a camaraderie or personal affiliation with the author's pseudonym might be somewhat put off by the truth. I'll be interested to see if that's happened in the past. I'm a woman who pretends to play a guy online. Does that count? I'll actually give you a serious answer. So, I was raised by a single mum. When I was a teenager, she had a bit of a midlife crisis and for a while was never home in the evenings. Like, I'm not blaming her, I was 15, it was fine. Anyway, I spent my time playing crappy MMOs. RuneScape, Ion, the usual suspects. I was also really active and semi-popular member on Rune HQ. Damn, this is a part of my life I'd never thought I'd revisit, actually. Anyway, I catfished so many girls. I had 30-year-olds on Ion sending me pictures and asking for them in return. There was this girl in RHQ who fell for me hard and told me a bunch of really personal stuff. Why? because I'm really frickin' gay and I couldn't admit it, and on the internet I could flirt with girls with no repercussions. I feel bad for any women who took me seriously, but I was a kid with no supervision undergoing an identity crisis. Don't do what I did. Honestly, I have 2 older sisters and I was the youngest for 5 years. When writing, my story's characters always seemed really feminine, even if I tried to make them male. I guess it's easier to appear as what people expect a female to be or act like, because I can relate more to them and I understand women more than men. I'm still 100% a straight guy though. It was 2005 and I'd just learned about RuneScape. I played as a male character for a while, always asking for a girlfriend until one day I found one. I knew almost nothing about her but gave her sets of armor like adamant. I learned quickly that she was a guy and that I had been scammed. I was always someone who enjoyed abusing glitches in games, either for profit or fun, and I found a YouTuber who made glitch videos and reached out to him. I was ignored time and time again. So I made a female character. In almost no time, I had a different boyfriend. He would give me so much stuff, even his account in the end. I then used that account to pursue the YouTuber as a female. And he took the bait. As a prepubescent boy, my voice was high enough to replicate being a female. Him and I talked for a long time. I'm talking 3 years. He fell in love with me. I was in too deep. I didn't know what to do, so I kept up the facade. I really felt like I did love him too, but only through his persona. We'd stay up on Skype for hours, laughing about things, planning a future, prank calling. That all ended when he hacked my PayPal account, found out my name and address, and began ruining my life. It started with pizza that I couldn't pay for, and it progressed to firemen, police officers, and dog walkers. This was not something I could explain to my parents. I lay low for years. He emailed me years later and apologized. I was apologetic too because of how that affected him so badly. We talked and became friends, as guys. About a year ago, I believe he decided to not be alive anymore. I hold myself accountable somewhat. To answer the question, I did it for free stuff and I had mixed success. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.